don't ask for.
Usually heavier because we're going to be compact.
Oh, yeah, that will potentially.
Oh, I'm getting a lot of those emails.
A big part of
When I
it.
left, I hadn't.
That shows up here.
That's right.
That's cute and slow.
Being 5 o'clock here on April 12th, I'd like to call the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board regular meeting to order. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Menz. Commissioner Elper.
Present.
Commissioner Abene.
Present.
Vice President Smith.
Here.
President Forney.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. I will take a motion then to approve the agenda.
So moved? Second?
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we then will go on to reports of officers. Please.
All right.
Superintendent Bangora.
Yeah, thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. Great to see everybody. It's been a while, but it's good to see all your faces. Let's jump right into it and start off with the citywide events for the Park Board. So 2023 Earth Day cleanup is Saturday, April 22nd, 9:30 a.m. to noon. This year's cleanup takes place throughout the city of Minneapolis at 42 sites and is in collaboration between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and the City of Minneapolis, Solid Waste and Recycling. The event typically draws 1,300 plus volunteers who have collected over 10,000 pounds of garbage and recycling on average per year. In recreation, the Minneapolis Teen Job and Opportunity Fair that's happening here at headquarters is on Saturday, April 15th. From 10 a.m. to 1 o'clock p.m., Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board will be hosting the Minneapolis Teen Job and Opportunity Fair in partnership with the Youth Coordinating Board. The job fair will have over 25 employers on site from a variety of fields. In preparation for the upcoming job fair, NPRB Youth Program Specialists hosted prep rallies at 5 recreation centers throughout Minneapolis, which included North Commons, Powderhorn, Farview, and East Phillips. The prep rallies gave youth an opportunity to work on their resumes, apply for jobs online, and learn about opportunities with local employers. Adult athletics. Currently, there are 34 basketball teams, 81 co-ed softball teams, 100 men's softball teams, 5 women's softball teams, 12 indoor broomball teams, 175 sand volleyball teams, 13 adult soccer teams, 42 adult kickball teams, 147 pickleball players, and 114 individual free agent adult registered for spring athletics. Just want to share those numbers to show that we're back, and it's great numbers that are showing up so far at our park, so very exciting. In aquatics, aquatics is busy hiring, working on hiring and recruiting summer lifeguards. For our water parks and beaches, hundreds of lifeguards, attendants, and instructors are being recruited, trained, and hired, and we're still in need of lifeguards. Spring and summer aquatics programs are open for registration, and over 1,600 participants have registered for swimming lessons, sailing, and open swim programs. Oops, sorry about that. Golf. Golf is getting ready for the 2023 season after Minneapolis' third snowiest winter in history. Sorry about that. Great news. Meadowbrook, Fort Snelling, and the Learning Center at Columbia and Hiawatha are now open. Proud that we are some of the first in the metro to open in 2023. And I know Larry is here, so we're Director Humphrey. Congratulations on that. And we're excited to get our golf courses open and ready for play. Ice arenas. Parade Ice Garden hosted thousands of hockey fans over the past month with a national tournament in late March. Northeast Ice Arena is currently hosting the Dryland Turf League and rentals. In youth sports, on Saturday, March 25th, the first clinics of the 2023 Twins RBI preseason series was held at Powderhorn Park and Jerry Gamble Boys and Girls Club. The clinics were in a collaboration between the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board Youth's Department, the Minnesota Twins, MPS high school baseball coaches, and 612 softball. The 2023 RBI baseball and softball season will feature the new Twins RBI jerseys. All participants ages 7 to 18 will receive a jersey with the Twins RBI logo on the front. We are incredibly grateful for the great partnership with the Minnesota Twins and the Twins Community Fund. We really are, and thank you for their support over the years. The Minnesota Twins Community Fund will be providing free gloves for all MPRB, RBI, 6U, and 8U players. The annual glove giveaway event will be held on Wednesday, May 24th at Bryant Square Park from 5 to 6 o'clock p.m. In the North Service area, the basketball season at Falwell Park is wrapping up, and both 11U Open teams will be participating in the Gary Wilson Invitational Tournament and the MYAS Rec State Championships. At Weber Park hosted an egg hunt for 350 people. There were 2 Nerf surprise baskets for winners of the coveted golden egg. At the Northeast and Southeast service area, this is the first 16U basketball team hosted out of Luxton Park in several years. They're proud to say that it's a local team of local kids living in the neighborhood. At Botno Park is hosting a senior bag for adult 55 plus to play beanbags and socialize. This is the core group of participants who all grew up in Botno and have lived here for most of their lives. The stories they have are amazing, and what they're sharing has been really rewarding for the staff. Upper South Service Area, East Phillips Park brought in an African drummer to celebrate the end of Black History Month. He taught 17 attendees drumming, a song, and a dance. The kids love this and have asked when he will be coming back. Archery has been a big hit at Stewart Park. As the kids improve their skills, they shoot at more challenging targets like balloons, ping pong balls, and apples. Hiawatha School Park hosted 300 people at its first spring egg hunt. Over 1,000 eggs were hidden twice for the 2 egg hunts. There was also pictures with the bunny, spring animals, craft treats, and games. In the Lower South area, MPRB staff hosted the Archery League program at Phelps Boys and Girls Club. For Women's History Month, Powderhorn Park put together an activity that included a gallery walk of 20 women who have made history. During this event, youth listened to a playlist of influential women in the music industry, which was created in collaboration with the Spark Studios for Youth. In the Southwest Service Area, Kenwood Park was fortunate enough to have 2 high-level coaches this year for the fundamental basketball program. Cheryl Reeves and Carly Knox, coach of the Minnesota Lynx and president of the business operation. Their experience and expertise were extremely valuable for our young, up-and-coming players. So it's really cool to have celebrities out there and the coach and the operations. Pretty amazing. So thank you to the Minnesota Lynx for coming out and really coming to our park and working with our kids. Very grateful. In partnership with the Bell Museum, Pershing Park held their second Planets in the Parks event. 55 participants were able to view Mars, the 4 moons of Jupiter, Venus, the mountain range and the moon, and the Orion Nebula. Pretty cool. Rec Plus, Hiawatha School Park, Rec Plus hosted 40 kids who used their imagination to create cardboard leprechaun traps. So apparently they caught some leprechauns. I asked if they caught leprechauns. I'm not even sure if they did, but they won't tell me. So pretty cool, though. It's great imagination, so really, really cute. So Harrison Park Rec Plus enjoyed art activities, coloring rainbows, and having a fun coloring sun catchers. Spark Studios, to celebrate Mario Day, March 10th, at Powderhorn Park, staff put together a real-life Mario party where youth competed in mini games of balance, speed, listening, and chance. With the help of additional Spark and Youth Line staff, 37 kids came to the party. Everyone earned 3D printer coins and left with prizes. Kids are already asking when the next one will be. Really cool. So what you'll see on the screen next is the grants of Hennepin County Grant Awards received in spring of 2023. We have received Hennepin County Youth Sports Grant funding for equipment at Peavy, Stewart, Whittier Parks, and Worth Trailhead. Thank you, and I really mean this, thank you to the Hennepin County for their support. Diamond Sports Facilities Committee's update. An organizational meeting was conducted on March 21st where the study process was laid out and staff solicited participation from a technical advisory group committee, or TAC. A committee of 8 individuals representing Diamond Sports interest and varying neighborhoods were selected by staff. The first meeting of the committee will occur in late April and early May. Staff intended to provide a progress report to the Board of Recreation Committee in June or July. The 2023 Summer Activity Guide is complete and available on our website. It's more of just an FYI. And environmental stewardship, forestry. Plans for this year's Arbor Day celebration is well underway. Our forestry outreach coordinator is working with an enthusiastic Arbor Day planning committee. Be sure to mark your calendars for April 28th at Wyndham Northeast Park. Emerald Ash Borer information sessions. We're hosting a series of 5 public meetings this April where residents and property owners can learn about the impact of EAB, specifically why Minnesota's ash trees are dying and need to be removed, how the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board has been working on the problem, what to expect for tree removal cost and payment options, including financial hardship options. The first meeting was held virtually this week, Monday, April 10th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. The second is currently tonight, Wednesday, April 12th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at Harrison Recreation Center, 503 North Irving Avenue. Then the fourth is this coming Monday, April 17th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. here in the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board headquarters. And the fifth is next Saturday, April 22nd, 10:30 a.m. to noon at Creekview Recreation Center, 5001 Humboldt Avenue North. In the environmental management area, the Conservation Corps, Minnesota, and Iowa crew begin spring team a term with MPRB. MPRB is hosting a Conservation Corps crew this year. From the end of March through mid-December, the crew will consist of 3 to 4 young adults, ages 18 to 25, enrolled in an AmeriCorps term of service where they will gain both work experience and monetary education award. The crew will be leading teams of 2 to 6 youth, ages 15 to 18, in restoration working during the spring and fall terms. Conservation Corps focus will be removal of invasive species throughout MPRB managed natural areas. Primary targets will include buckthorn, roundleaf, bittersweet, and leafy spurge. And that's the CCMI crew touring the natural areas below at Minnehaha Falls. Volunteers and community gardens. Love to talk about our volunteers. The 2022 Volunteer Impact Report was recently posted on the volunteer webpage. The annual report highlights the contributions of park volunteers and strives to recognize the exceptional work of volunteers throughout our park system. The 2022 Community Garden Racial Equity Evaluation is also complete and is on the Community Garden webpage. The garden plot application asks gardeners to share their race and ethnicity. The data will be used to evaluate the 2022 season and develop recommendation for improving racial equity in MPRB's community gardens. Asset management, and this is particularly around the equipment shop. The equipment shop accepted delivery of the new John Deere tractor for Gross Golf Course. This new tractor will replace the existing tractor that is 14 years old. The tractor will be instrumental in performing a variety of activities at the golf course, including loading and unloading deliveries, digging holes and add or fix irrigation systems, moving sand, sod, or other materials, some new removal of the winter months, some snow removal in the winter months, and mowing utilizing the 3-point hitch type mower. I'm going to ask Director Humphrey if I can ride on that at some point, so that's kind of my plan. So I think he's here somewhere. I think I can get him to do that. Asset management, trade shop. Dave McNeil, the painter, and Matt Kronig, the painter, from the trade shop worked together to paint the entire interior space of Pearl Park. Mose Ore, paint foreman, worked with Recreation Park new colors that really livened up the space. The work was done as part of the MPP 20 paint program and really turned out incredibly cool. It's really great. This was a fun project to do for the team because of all the positive feedback they received. We look forward to continuing this process throughout the interior spaces across our park system. And it's amazing what a little paint will do to our buildings and make them really look incredible. So grateful for the paint shop and the work that they're doing. North Service Area. Through spring, though spring is eluding us, well, it's actually here now, staff are focused on spring cleanup activities. Unsightly potholes are being repaired, cleaning, garbage and debris are being picked up from the surrounding areas after the long winter. These pictures are park keepers Gennario Cruz Martinez, Onsimil Jimez Antonio, documenting potholes along the parkway in the North Service area. And the service crew will contact 311 to report any potholes that need to be filled by Public Works. The MPRB staff will fill potholes owned in our parking lots once hot patch plants are open in mid-April. So great work, and it's kind of ironic we've been talking about our parkways, and here we are, right? So great work by our crews, though, and the work that they're doing. Broomball and hockey, rink removal. Shingle Creek broomball rinks have been removed and stored for the season in 2022 and again in 2023. Broomball was moved to Shingle Creek for the season due to construction work at Bryn Mawr. Pictured below are park keepers Crystal Thomas, Florencio Cruz Martinez, Gennario Cruz Martinez, I get this wrong again, Onsimo Jemez and crew leader Thad Weber, removing the storing of broomball rings at Shingle Creek. Victory Memorial Flagpole Monument. The images below show MPRB's supplier, Twin Cities Flag Source, preparing to rehang the flag at the Victory Memorial Flagpole Monument. The flag was damaged from extended use and had to be replaced. In horticulture, while it may not feel like it yet, but spring is on its way. We kind of did this before today, so. The first tulips are poking through the grounds at Lindale Farmstead Park. Mark your calendars for your spring bulb show coming this May at Lindale Park near Lake Harriet. The horticulture team has made the most of what may feel like an endless winter. Staff have continued to dormant pruning and site cleanups. The most recent projects include removing weed trees from the conifers planted along the section of Minnehaha Parkway near the Nokomis Community Center, cleaning up the outer fence line at Hiawatha Golf Course, and rejuvenating the shrub beds along Minnehaha Drive in Minnehaha Regional Park. Staff will continue to monitor these sites throughout the growing season to see how areas bounce back and respond to the work. A longer season, winter season, with deeper than average snow is a recipe for increased rabbit feeding damage on many of the shrubs and small trees. Park users may notice stripped bark and girdled branches. Staff will begin assessing the extent of the damage in the coming weeks. In the planning department, some exciting things here. Update and redesign website of the Minneapolis Public Art Collection is available online. The Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board and City of Minneapolis have collaborated to update and expand the website showcasing both our public art collections. It's really exciting for me, but this is great news. The website includes information about artwork in parks and public spaces across our city, divided into 5 geographic areas. Choose your own adventure or follow a curated self-guided tour. Each option includes artwork details, photos, maps, and directions. View the new project page and learn more about visiting the MPRB website and searching for public art in our parks. The North Commons Park improvements. Please consider joining at the North Commons Park Recreation Center on Tuesday, April 25th at 5:00 p.m. for an important project update. Staff will be presenting community engagement results as well as options for the project going forward regarding size, budget, and schedule. Following the presentation, there will be a question and answer session. Burger Fountain. What's really cool about this one too, the Burger Fountain. The Burger Fountain, known to many in the community as the Dandelion Fountain, has been a beloved feature at Loring Park since the installation in 1975. In 2020, the Burger Fountain ceased to work due to increased maintenance cost and staffing impacts from COVID-19. The MPRB is now partnering with the Burger Fountain Task Force, a community-led group, to gather feedback from the public to create an updated design for the fountain and plaza area. The design will maintain the Dandelion feature. Construction is currently slated for the fall of 2024. Learn more about this project, of course, at our website, www.minneapolisparks.org. /Burger Fountain. And it's really exciting to hear that work being going forward, and it's going to be great to see it. And the plaza, I think, is really exciting too, added addition to this. So very happy to see that getting done. Archives. The MPRB Archives is supporting the citywide Doors Open event this coming May 13th to 14th at 10 a.m. to 5 o'clock p.m. each day. 3 MPRB venues will invite visitors to learn about our facilities and the history of the spaces at Waterworks, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Park, and the Theodore Wirth Home and Administration Building, where I live. It's going to be fun. April is Records and Information Management Month, so staff are being encouraged to contact the archives with questions about file retention schedules, disposal of records, or transfers to permanent storage. And I think this is the last one, so thank you for your patience. The Superintendent Annual Report. This report looks amazing, I have to tell you guys. I'm pleased to share our 2022 annual report with commissioners, staff, and hundreds of our elected, nonprofit, and community partners. The report highlights our major accomplishments and data from the 9 goals of the Parks for All Comprehensive Plan. I'm extremely proud of all that has been accomplished together in 2022 to serve the people of Minneapolis. This was possible due to the tremendous work and dedication of our employees, the contributions of our volunteers, and the continued collaboration and support from our many partners. The report can be viewed at www.minneapolisparks.org/annual report_report, and will soon be available at all of our recreation centers, program facilities, and Minneapolis public art and public libraries. And I can't say enough about it, how wonderful the work is done. I know Dawn and her team and have done a great, Ben, Angie, if I name them all, I'll miss them. Jill did a really fantastic job on this report, and if you've seen it, it really is a beautiful report, and just really proud of the work we've accomplished as an organization, so I hope you enjoy it. Thank you for your time, President Forney and board. That is it.
Any questions of the superintendent? Not seeing any, I will. First of all, lovely to see you all. It's been quite a nice break that we've had and everything that's intersected with the 3 high holidays that happened in the same week, basically. Anyway, but we're now back to work. And so beginning in May, we all know that we have our budget retreats. And so Superintendent Bangor and I are excited about these formative conversations and their outcomes with this board. And due to last year's retreat, we are on track to actualize our stated goals. I'm really excited, you guys. I appreciate everybody's eagerness and everything. So both the superintendent and I are also adding this time in these retreats to reaffirm our roles as commissioners and as staff. And as I've admitted often, along with Commissioner Musich and everything, that it took us a good year and a half before we realized, how does this really function? You guys have not been into this a year and a half, and I'm just totally blown away about how much you understand as far as what is governance. And so we will be just touching base during the retreat to just reaffirm what we are all doing as far as our roles. So I just wanted to indicate that to you. And then also, being we just had the superintendent's report and everything, both the superintendent and I have decided that we would like to have that report be framed, I guess is the best way, around our strategic directions. Because they are so critical, and just to continually have us touch base as to our commitment to them. So I just want to remind everybody that the budget retreat, our first one, is going to be May 3rd. We'll be in the Minnehaha room, and then our next one will be on the 17th of May, also in the Minnehaha room. So just a reminder of that. Looking forward to it, and another productive time. So. With that, I will then move on to any reports from the appointees of outside boards, commissions, and committees. Yes, Commissioner Abene.
Thank you, President Forney. I was actually at the Board of Estimate and Taxation meeting before coming here, and it's the first meeting we've had in a couple of months, so I think things are going to start to pick up in that regard. I think the main point of interest was that, the Board of Estimate and Taxation in prior years had had a staff person that supported the work of the board, but in this last round, that person retired, and so they've employed essentially a consultant. And the Board of Estimate and Taxation is focusing on ways to essentially do, I think, a lot of what the Park Board's doing with regard to equity in planning and investment. So we had a brief presentation from the consultants, and there was some discussion about how the capital plan that the city advances could be broken down by ward and so on. And so I just at least advocated to some extent that the Park Board work be integrated into this work, although I think this is work we're already doing, but from a data perspective. And I have to say, and I don't think it's me with my rose-colored glasses that I sometimes have when I'm part of an organization, but the Park Board was actually kind of held up a little bit during the discussion as an organization that's doing good work around investment. That's a big deal. So anyway, I felt pretty good about that, and I give credit to the prior boards that implemented that, and we have 2 members of those prior boards here. But I'm glad we're all interested in continuing with that work, because it's really makes a big difference for Minneapolis. So that's my report.
Any others? Any others? Okay, we will move on to the consent agenda, and I just also forgot to say that if Resolution 2023-47 passes in Administration and Finance, it will be brought forward to the full board. So on to the consent agenda. Anybody want to move that?
I would move the consent agenda as a slate.
Great.
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. On to then standing committees report. Planning Committee, who is handling that today?
Me.
Alper, sorry.
Yes, I would like to move Resolution 2023-48, resolution approving temporary occupancy under Section 4F of the Transportation Act of 1966 for Hennepin County's Lake Street Multimodal Improvements Project adjacent to and within Minneapolis Chain of Lakes Regional Park.
Second?
Thank you. Any discussion? Oh, yes, Commissioner Bene. Oh, no? Okay. All right. All those in favor, please signify. This is not needing a roll call, right?
Actually, we should.
Okay. Secretary, please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson.
No.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Commissioner Musich.
Aye.
Commissioner Menz.
Aye.
Commissioner Alper.
Aye.
Commissioner Bene.
Aye.
Vice President Smith. President Forney.
Aye.
Vice President Smith, were you a nay?
I said
Aye.
I said aye.
Thank you for the clarification. There are 8 ayes, 1 nay.
Thank you. On then to Administration and Finance. Who?
Yes, I would like to move Resolution 2023-54, resolution requesting the City of Minneapolis to increase parkway paving and related infrastructure investment, including ADA improvements and seal coating, to $6 million per year starting in 2024, including an escalation factor for future years consistent with the city's capital program annual increases, and to develop a program and funding to support parkway reconstruction.
Second.
Thank you. See a light. Commissioner Olson.
I would like to bring forward an amendment I have submitted, and I will go through that now. And I'll just read what the new additions rather than the full resolution. So my amendment goes as, whereas parkways were last considered holistically through the ECPO plan in 1970, which applied standards for modern roadways to the parkway system. Whereas guidance for low-volume and low-speed roadways, as provided by the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials, has changed since the parkways were last constructed. Whereas parkways continue to be used for commuting and recreation purposes, which at times result in vehicle congestion. Whereas parkways often run adjacent to water sources within Minneapolis parks and contribute to stormwater to those resources without treatment to remove sediments or pollutants. Whereas the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Sixth Assessment Report notes that human activities, principally through emissions of greenhouse gases, have unequivocally caused global warming. Whereas opportunities to mitigate the impacts of climate change could be significant in a reimagination of the parkway system, wherein new standards could result in reduced stormwater runoff, reduced heat island effects, reduced greenhouse gas emissions, and other benefits to adjacent parkland. Whereas Parks for All in the MPRB Comprehensive Plan 2021-2036, Goal 2, Strategy 10, directs MPRB to establish a new vision for the ecological and transportation potential of the Grand Rounds Parkway system while honoring its historic character. Whereas, following the opening of the parkways to pedestrian and bicycle movements during the COVID-19 pandemic, park users have expressed interest in expanding the use of parkways on occasion to allow for pedestrian and bicycle-focused events of limited duration. Resolved, that the Board of Commissioners direct staff to prepare a proposal for a parkway study to be initiated during 2024 if sufficient funds are approved as a part of the MPRB's 2024 budget, including but not limited to consideration of the system's extent, configuration, and roadway type in response to conditions changed since the implementation of the ECBO plan. And I think we have open time now, but that's...
I know, but I'm just wondering if we had a second on that.
Second.
Okay, thank you. So if it's okay, we're going to break away from that to go to open time. So being it's 5:31. Thanks to all of you who want to share your thoughts and ideas with us during open time. Before we start, I want to provide an abbreviated version of the open time rules. All individuals wishing to speak may call in before noon the day of the meeting to be placed on the agenda, or can sign up at the board meeting prior to the start of open time. I will be calling on people on the sign-up list only. Open time for public input shall not exceed a total of 15 minutes, with the time limit to be allocated by myself, the president. Please watch the timer right up here to be considerate of others here to speak and stay within your allotted time. During open time, public testimony will be given without debate, and only clarifying questions from the board will be allowed. 2 types of items not appropriate for open time in order to protect the privacy of all individuals, and those are pending litigation and personnel issues. So please refrain from commenting on specific personnel issues. We will not tolerate discriminatory and/or harassing words directed at anyone. So please ensure that all comments you make tonight comply with the policy. This board made the decision many years ago to operate under Robert's Rules of Order. Under Robert's Rules of Order, the ceding of time to another person is not allowed. So only those signed up to speak may only speak for their own allotted amount of time. We also request that each speaker provide his or her name and address. And we have 5 speakers, so I am going to allow 3 minutes each. And I will start out with Steve Rice, and after that it is going to be Stephen Greenfield. Welcome, Steve.
My name is Steve Rice, and my address is 4115 Upton Avenue South, Minneapolis. President Forney, Vice President Smith, and Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm a board member of the Friends of Roberts Bird Sanctuary. I'm here to ask that you immediately opt out of pesticide treatment in Roberts Bird Sanctuary, which are likely scheduled to start next month. The Park Board long ago opted out of Metropolitan Mosquito Control District treatment at the Eloise Butler Wildflower Garden, the other bird sanctuary in the park system, and should stop the drops now in Roberts Bird Sanctuary. Birds and bats need insects to survive, but in the height of spring bird migration and nesting, when migrating species need rest and food during their epic journeys, and resident birds need safety and food for the young, MMCD regularly applies insecticide inside Roberts Bird Sanctuary. Pesticides treatments in Roberts mean that instead of being a refuge, all the birds and other animals, including humans, are subjected to the noise and disruption of helicopters dropping methoprene and spinosad pellets into the sanctuary, even during migration and nesting when birds are most vulnerable. Scientific studies show that populations of birds and insects are in rapid decline caused by habitat loss, climate change, and other growing threats. A recent study showed that more than almost 1 in 3 birds has disappeared in North America in the last 50 years due to habitat loss and other human activities. That means there are 3 billion fewer birds in North America today than in 1970. These losses are evident at the local level, especially in our parks and natural areas. Toxic chemicals kill mosquito larvae in Roberts Bird Sanctuary. Toxic chemicals used to kill mosquito larvae in Roberts Bird Sanctuary degrade and reduce the habitat value for birds as well as other wildlife who need this refuge. Human visitors are also adversely affected and troubled when they realize that pesticides are routinely applied inside this natural area, even during droughts when conditions don't support the breeding of mosquitoes. Please opt out of MMC treatments now, consistent with the Park Board's core mission to protect our natural resources for current and future generations of people, plants, and wildlife. Thanks.
Thank you. Stephen Greenfield, and after that is Constance Pepin.
President Forney, Vice President Smith, Commissioners, Superintendent Bangura. I'm Stephen Greenfield, 3429 Girard Avenue South, another board member of the Friends of Roberts Bird Sanctuary. So as Steve Rice said, the Park Board opted out from treating with insecticides at the other sanctuary in the park system, Eloise Butler, and has repeatedly declined to even explain why Roberts is being treated so differently. So we have been looking into the data that the MMCD makes available on their website. For those of you who haven't looked at it, for the hundreds of locations, their data shows when there was sampling and the quote dip count unquote of mosquito larvae found, and when there were treatments and with what pesticide. Note that it does not show whether the dip count found was from mosquitoes that can even be a vector, a carrier of West Nile virus. It only shows if those vector mosquitoes were ever found at that site. You can't tell whether in the particular sampling there were any threatening mosquitoes found. So normally this data should be used to set a threshold lever that would trigger treatment of breeding areas with the least toxic larvicide, the bacteria BTI. Instead, in practice, treatments are routine, not a response to data indicating a public health threat, and often use more toxic chemicals. They take place when there is no West Nile virus in the state now, even when no larvae that can carry the disease or even no mosquito larvae at all are found, and even during severe droughts. In particular, in Roberts, there are 7 treatment sites. 6 were treated in 2022 with a total of 26 treatments. Of these 6 sites, only 2 show any dip count data on which valid treatments could be justified. One of those 2 shows a positive dip count in 2022. The other site does show a dip count for 2021, but it was 0. It doesn't show whether those, again, were from disease vectors or any other kinds of mosquitoes. And 3 of the sites have not been sampled since 2015 and 1 not since 2018. These data show that treatments are happening with no observed vector larvae or for those observed up to 8 years ago. They're clearly not based on a known threat to public health and should not be happening in a bird sanctuary during a biodiversity crisis. MMCD staff have told me that they very properly that they cannot discuss policy with me and we should go to the MPRB. But staff have told us that you defer to the MMCD, so it's like a runaround. So you have co-opted for Eloise Butler and can and should do the same for the Roberts Bird Sanctuary. Thank you.
Constance Pepin, and then Ann Laughlin.
Hello, thank you for letting me be here. My name is Constance Pepin. I'm in Park District 6, and I'm here to ask again that you opt out of pesticide treatments now in Roberts Bird Sanctuary. No pesticide is without risk to the environment. According to the Xerces Society, many currently used mosquito control agents have significant negative impacts on many aquatic invertebrates, as well as the fish, birds, and amphibians that live and feed in wetlands. MMCD focuses on assurances about BTIs, relatively low risk to non-target species. But most of the time, in fact, 6 of the 7 sites in 2022 were treated with methoprene, not BTI. Methoprene is a more toxic chemical that is known to disrupt food webs and kill many organisms other than mosquitoes. According to the Xerces Society, insect growth regulators like methoprene are broadly toxic to insects. Chronic effects include developmental disorders, physical defects, and reproductive anomalies in numerous insects. Many birds and amphibians that rely on aquatic flies are harmed by these products. For example, reduction of the aquatic food base can affect nest site choices of female ducks, as well as the food resources to sustain ducklings and migrating waterfowl. Even worse, MMCD is using spinosad, an even more toxic chemical than methoprene in Roberts Bird Sanctuary. Spinosad is used to kill a wide variety of insects, including thrips, leaf miners, spider mites, mosquitoes, ants, fruit flies, beetles, and caterpillars, all food sources for birds, well beyond the killing capacity of BTI. It makes no sense to apply pesticides in a bird sanctuary, not in Eloise Butler, which you already don't, and not in Roberts Bird Sanctuary, which you continue to allow MMC to do. Friends of Roberts have many times over the years asked, why does the park board opt out of treating the other bird sanctuary, but will not do the same for Roberts? If you are going to continue to defer to MMCD, despite no scientific basis or public health threat, we feel you at least owe us an explanation for this inconsistency. I'd like to read a quote from Rachel Carson, who, as you know, wrote Silent Spring. "The problem I dealt with in Silent Spring is not an isolated one," she said. The public, she said, has acquiesced to the use of pesticides simply because lack of research on the subject seemed to indicate all was okay. It was not okay. She encouraged readers to become proactive consumers and citizen scientists. We urgently need an end to these false assurances, to the sugarcoating of unpalatable facts. It is the public that is being asked to assume the risks that the insect controllers calculate. The public must decide whether it wishes to continue on the present road, and it can do so only when in full possession of the facts.
Thank you. We have a public hearing, so I am trying to keep strict too. So Ann McLaughlin and then Carol Becker.
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioners. I'm Ann Laughlin. I'm in the Howe neighborhood, and I'm with the Coalition of Local Bird Conservation Organizations. I'm here to urge you also to opt out of pesticides at Roberts. And as the climate change occurs and our biodiversity degrades, we just can't keep doing business as usual. It threatens that declining biodiversity, and it threatens the health of and welfare of our own species. So both bird sanctuaries in Minneapolis are in the chain of lakes important bird area, which provides essential habitat for wildlife. Migratory birds, many thousands of them and dozens of species, rely on these areas within the Mississippi Flyway during their journeys to and from their breeding grounds in the north and the south. So 96% of terrestrial birds feed their young insects. 96% of terrestrial birds feed their young insects. The Park Board has a responsibility to protect migratory birds and other wildlife throughout the city. The excessive and routine treatments in Roberts Bird Sanctuary and other natural areas are degrading habitat and killing many other insects beyond mosquitoes without a data-driven public health justification. The low-flying helicopters disturb and frighten the birds and during their migration and nesting seasons. And food sources for birds and bats are being eliminated in Roberts based on no real threat to public health. So at an absolute minimum, treatments must not happen during spring and fall migration to protect these birds. There are ecologically sound and sustainable methods of controlling mosquitoes, but filling up our wetlands and our woodlands with ever-increasing amounts of pesticides is not one of them. So please follow the precautionary principle and opt out of pesticide use in Roberts, just as you opt out of treatments at Eloise Butler. And instead of degrading the habitat and food chain for birds with pesticide treatments, the Park Board could just post signs at the sanctuary informing people that personal protection is the best protection and the only real defense against mosquito bites. So to allow these treatments to continue ignores the aforementioned climate crisis, and it undermines your mission to protect and preserve our natural resources for current and future generations of people, plants, and wildlife. Thank you.
Thank you, Bean. It's 5:44. I just first of all want to say thank you all, your conversation. I am going to say, if you would like to speak with our Assistant Superintendent, Jeremy Barrick, regarding this, he is here in the audience, and we would welcome any conversation with you. And so unfortunately, we have one more speaker for open time, but we do have, apologize. Did you want to do a presentation?
I will, but I think you should go.
Okay, we'll finish off. Thank you, Secretary Ringel. Yes, so our last speaker we will take on, and that is Carol Becker. Please come forward.
Do I have 3 minutes or 1 minute?
3.
3 minutes, okay, I won't talk that fast then. My name is Carol Becker, 3201 48th Avenue South in Minneapolis. I wanted to speak about Commissioner Olson's proposal to do a study on potentially closing the parkways or otherwise restricting access to them. I would point, number one, that the question about the West River Road has been settled because that is a federal road and it's not available to close. But for the other parkways, I would ask that the park board do 2 things. If you are going to restrict access, either through automobiles or in other ways, that you disclose the impacts on carbon emissions. Right now, what we're seeing on Hennepin Avenue, for example, where they want to restrict access, for the automobiles, either they're going to be stuck in congestion and moving very slowly and emitting way more carbon than they had been, or they're going to be taking much longer routes. Same issue with when we were looking at the question of closing the West River Road. And the park board should be concerned about the environment. And if you're going to be making changes to the roadways, then we need to have you disclose what the impacts are on carbon emissions. Because what we've seen throughout the city is there have been all these changes that have been made in the name of the environment that are actually driving up carbon emissions because they're making automobiles drive farther or in more congestion. The second thing that I would ask, if you're going to study restricting access to automobiles or other individuals to parks, that you disclose who those people are and what the estimated change in usage in the parks will be. If you are going to close a parkway, then not only are the people in the cars not going to be able to use the park, but all the people who are trying to access the park, that's going to be substantially diminished. I think those 2 things are just a base requirement for any study that you're going to do on the parkways. 1, carbon emissions, and 2, usage. Okay? That would be my request to you, and that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. On that, I will close then our open time, and then I will open up our public hearing, of which we have no one signed up to speak, but we have a presentation. This is regarding naming or renaming of Excel Field Park to Excel Energy Park. And so, Deputy Superintendent Ringel, please, presentation.
President Forney, Commissioners, thank you for holding a public hearing tonight on this naming request. This is for what is currently Excel Field Park, changing it to Excel Energy Park. This nomination was submitted on February 10th, 2023, and it was submitted by Excel Energy, and the contact is here tonight, Suzanne Murphy, and she will come up in a little bit and be able to share a few words with you as well. In terms of our nomination process, all of the required notifications have been made, all the way from the Assistant Superintendent for Planning to Council Member to all of you, so that has been complete. This is a property that we lease from Excel Energy. This isn't a property that we have the underlying ownership of. The current lease is from April 2014. It's a 20-year lease, and we have a possibility of doing an additional 20-year lease on that. There are some requirements within this lease. We have to use this property for recreation and athletic activities that are consistent with our practices, and we're not able to do community agriculture or community gardens or urban agriculture on this property. While the current lease began in 2014, we have had a relationship with this property since the 1990s. There are some improvements on this field. Some of you on this board will remember work we did with the Cal Ripken Senior Foundation several years ago. And that brought forward a field, that the Rod Carew All-Star Field, and it's an artificial turf field. It had many different donors at the time. And I think at this moment, before I get into the specifics of the next step, this is where, if Suzanne would like to come up and talk a little bit about the desire for the renaming, this would be the perfect spot for it.
Thank you. Yeah. President, Commissioners, Superintendent. So my name is Suzanne Murphy, and I'm the Community Relations Manager for Excel Energy in Minneapolis, proud resident of Park Board District 5 on the south side. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak briefly. So as mentioned, Excel Energy has submitted a request to change the name from the park from Excel Field Park to Excel Energy Park. This is a minor administrative change just to bring it in line with our branding guidelines. And as mentioned, the park is unique in that Excel Energy owns the land and has a lease with the parks. I just wanted to say that we really appreciate the partnership and the relationship with the parks. Every year, we have days of service where across our service territory, our employees, our volunteers roll up their sleeves to help out in their community. And last September, our CEO, Bob Frenzel, who is a Minneapolis resident whose son plays baseball at this park, was part of a partnership with Minneapolis Forestry to plant 50 trees at this location. Even Elmer, the elm tree or forestry mascot, was there. So we really enjoy our partnership, and I've had an initial conversation with Commissioner Menz and look forward to continuing the conversation about how we can be a good partner with the parks, especially at this location. So thanks for the opportunity to speak, and thanks for your consideration on this issue.
So Commissioners, tonight is the first hearing. The second hearing would occur, I'm not quite certain what the exact calendar will be in 2024, but right now I'm eyeing December 4th, 2024, which would be 2 months before the final vote, which again, I'm not quite certain where we'll be in 2025 in terms of the exact calendar, but we'd anticipate that for about February 19th of 2025. And tonight's hearing followed our typical notification process, and we have all of the required commissioners here, so that's great. One thing I will note, you saw this recently, so there's just one change. Since this pending naming action list was shown to you, we actually had the nominator for the Maddie Clark Storytelling Circle pass away, and it looks like there's a typo there. It's not the Storytelling Circle Rick Recker Trail. That's two separate nominations. That being said, I'm actively looking for a new person to carry that nomination forward and would likely carry it forward myself if I'm not able to find a nominator for that. So with that, that is the presentation.
So we do not have any speakers for this public hearing, so I'm just going to ask, is there anybody who wishes to speak on this name change? Is there anybody who wishes to speak on this name change?
Am I allowed to speak on the name change?
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see.
Sorry. I didn't
First
know,
of all,
if it was
Commissioner
only,
Menz, go for it.
I didn't know if it was only constituents at that point. Yeah, I did have a conversation. When I heard that we were going to rename this, I reached out to Secretary Ringgold, and I also reached out to Suzanne Murphy. So if many of you have not been to this park, there is a really nice field there. It's actually the only field that has been in use at this point because it's turf. Not that I really love turf. It is an unrealized space for recreation in our system. And it doesn't, when I was on the CAC for our neighborhood, we didn't plan for that because it's owned by Excel. So there's a lot of opportunity for partnership here, and I'm wondering about the donors that, you know, built the original field. There's one field and then there's open space. There's barely any trees. So I would like, I know that as we're going into budgeting and we're thinking about the needs of the park board and the needs for recreation, this is a good spot. It's very accessible to the north side. It's probably less than a mile from Weber Park. And honestly, would be a great place for a domed structure that we run. So it is an extreme need for this community, for the city, for the region, and it's an ideal location. And I think that it's possible that with partners and with funding that we can explore those things. And as the budget part.
I believe you might be out of order.
Okay.
And all I was doing is calling to see on the public, so 3 times I need to indicate. Is there anybody else who would like to speak to the public hearing? Okay. Considering that and everything, anything else to the naming? Okay. I appreciate that. And so we will move on then, or back to, excuse me. Yes, we were back to we just moved or had a second on the amendment proposed by Commissioner Olson. And Commissioner Olson, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so I'll explain some of my thought process and reasoning behind this. So when thinking about our legacy and thinking about the next 7 generations and what we want to leave for those who come after us, what comes first in my mind is climate. Climate, climate, climate. And being able to look at them and say that we have done everything we can with a full heart to prevent a further worsening of the crisis we are in. I mentioned the IPCC in the amendment, and what they had to say was quite dire. And there is hope. We can take action. The world has to reduce emissions by 50% within the next few years. No, by 2030, we have to stop any new emissions in the next few years, even though we are continuing to hit new records year after year. And what that means to me is that there's no governing agency, there's no body, there's no action too small that we should not take. And the motivation behind this amendment is to recognize that we have not looked holistically at our parks and our parkways and how they're designed, how they are treated, programmed, what have you, in over 50 years. And we live in a much different world than 50 years ago. And so this plan, it's not the parkway closure plan, although it could result in, programming to temporarily do that in certain spaces. It is a plan to have our very smart and well-informed staff to take a holistic look at our parkways. We would go through community processes eventually, and we would have a true reflection of what our constituents want, but also in a new context of managing the climate crisis. And that's just, the climate issues, I think we heard some things about how potentially creating new things like this can have more carbon output. That's completely false. There are several studies, I'm looking at one right now, about exploring traffic evaporation, and just a couple highlights. Significant traffic evaporation observed following tactical road space reduction. Traffic on intervention streets diminished by 14% relative to control streets. Neighboring streets did not develop increased traffic. So there are smart ways to do this to get the results that I know we all want around climate change. I know we all ran on that. I know we all care about that. So let's have this be a part of our legacy as well. We'll fund the parkways. What we'll have will be fantastic. And then we'll also consider how we can maybe reduce or change their purpose so we can continue to have a really fantastic system. Thank you.
Commissioner Alper.
Thank you, President Forney. I am excited to be supporting Commissioner Olson's amendment. again, to echo what he said, as we think about our legacy as a board and our emphasis this last year on climate resiliency, reimagining the functions and the extent of our parkway system rises to the top for me. Last year, we set our goals as a board and deemed Act Boldly for Our Climate Future to be one of our top strategic directions. 38% of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. come from transportation, 38%. And of that transportation sector, carbon dioxide emissions from personal vehicles contribute the highest share at a whopping 58%. That's all of us in our daily decisions about how we get around. So let's help give people infrastructure options. Let's be bold tonight.
Commissioner Benny, sorry.
Thanks for the chance to speak. We got this all at the same time as the public yesterday. I think we've heard from, I don't think there's the public's had as much of a chance to kind of weigh in on this amendment. And I do mean this, that this does seem like just let's close the parkways, which, keeps coming up and is just incredibly unpopular. But that being said, without getting too much into that, I also want to point out that this is where I think we run into problems doing things like funding pavement maintenance. So what we have here is a gap in pavement maintenance, a massive gap. This isn't about improvements. This isn't about modifications or thinking about reconstruction of the parkways. We could have a deep discussion about that. This is just to maintain what we have. And right now that's being run into the ground. And so the parkway pavements themselves serve both cars and cyclists in our city. And they're right now, as I understand it from talking to constituents, they're a very important part of our overall system and the enjoyment of our system. So I am not going to support this, and if depending on this conversation, I may put my light on again to have discussion about some of these other parts of what was just said. But at its very base, I'm just saying we need to focus on advocating for maintaining and taking care of what we have. And this is the point of this. That's it for me right now.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you, President Forney. I just, out of the jump, will say I'm not supporting this. I agree with Commissioner Benny that this is like a razor's hair away from attempting to start the conversation about closing parkways again. Commissioner Alper just alluded to that being a desire. I also find this completely conflating two issues, and it's essentially pork on something that we need to establish to protect our parkways, that we are going to be solid as a board to keeping working what we have, our own assets. And obviously potholes have been a massive issue. This is a hill to die on in terms of the park board to make sure that we find ways to fund our assets. And trying to add this, and if we want to have a different conversation about this, I mean, I don't want to have it, but I'd open myself up to that conversation. And in this moment, I do not feel like this is meant to be an amendment to this resolution. I'm very cautious to put staff time to anything, and this requires a much larger conversation. I cannot support this. Thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer?
I just want to point out two things. We have a climate strategic direction. We also have a maintenance strategic direction that I think are both equally important. In the current way that the resolve is written by staff that we originally had, the last portion of it reads, "and to develop a program and funding to support parkway reconstruction." Right now, we think we have two bonding requests out there around the Grand Rounds and for Lake of the Isles storm infrastructure parkway reconstruction. That's very targeted for climate resiliency. And to me, I see that pilot is our best way forward to try something along these lines while still being authentic to what our fiscal responsibilities are as commissioners. Kind of the crawl, walk, run kind of analogy where, you know, if we're not really getting the basics performed across the board, for us to kind of throw out a nebulous, you had some terms around it, Commissioner Olson, systems extent, configuration, and roadway type. To me, it's very nebulous. So my preference would be focus on the maintenance, focus on our 6 million, and there is room, to be honest, in this phrase to develop a program and funding to support parkway reconstruction. I mean, that ties in with our bonding request, and I think there's room to discuss some of these issues that you're mentioning within that. But I prefer the original statement. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson for a second time?
Yeah, just to respond to a few different things. A lot of this, just to the last thing kind of I heard there around some of the nebulous language, a lot of this came from working really closely with staff to make sure that this is something that they feel they could implement. And so the language we're seeing here is what they could work with to make something quality happen. And what better time to consider the holistic approach to our parkway system than when we're considering the full funding and reconstruction of them into the future. And I also want to say, if we're talking fiscal responsibility, $6 million a year for parkways is an incredible amount of money. There's so much that we can use that on. And if we are able to find some reductions and reduce that 6 million to 5.5 million, 5 million, whatever, that is fiscal responsibility. There's a representative in Amsterdam when asked, how can you afford to do all of this pedestrian infrastructure? The response is, how can you not?
Thank you.
How can you not?
Okay, Commissioner Benny.
Yes, okay. Thank you. I think the survey we did, 75% or something of people get to our parks in vehicles. That's one thing. The other thing is a lot of our parkways are abutting dwellings and structures, and so they serve a dual purpose of emergency vehicle access. That is a requirement of law. Even if you were to say, well, we're not going to allow ordinary or personal vehicles on that anymore, you'd still need the pavement. You'd still need to maintain that. When you have a city that's block after block, you need streets and roads to serve that purpose, and there's a lot of language in statute and the fire code, which is supported in statute. The other thing is, if we were going to take a systematic look at the system, it would be something that maybe I would recommend maybe bringing up during one of our budget retreats. I will advocate very strongly that we would, at that point, look at employing a civil engineer, a transportation engineer, to oversee that work at the park board. We have 55 miles of road, and we have a road authority.
Thank you. Sorry.
That's right.
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you for recognizing me, President Forney. I see kind of both sides on this. I hear Commissioner Olson trying to make sure that we don't miss an opportunity to reconstruct our parkways in a way that's going to be effective into the future. I think that that's wise. This might not be the place to do that for now, especially if we can get this new increase in funding, that there will be opportunities pretty much annually to do that. And I think that that's a conversation that we can need to continue to have. Because I know that I personally don't, and I hear climate, but I see the parkways also as recreation. And I wonder about, parking, and I use the parkways quite a bit, but I don't use them for transportation. I use them to go to the river. I mean, I don't want to miss opportunities to have electric vehicle charging stations where, and I don't want to miss opportunities for the future. But I don't think that this amendment necessarily needs to be done now.
Not seeing any other lights. I guess my greatest difficulty is that we have, the amendment is how it is interlaced, with the original resolution. I find it in conflict, and that one is dependent upon the other, and I feel that our resolution originally is a very clear-cut ask, and one that we have done an immense amount of research on. And so I too can't support the amendment. I would consider, though, if the amendment maker would consider splitting it, dividing the question, that would be an entirely different thing. But in regards to the amendment as is to this resolution, I cannot support it. So not seeing any other lights, I believe we should then vote on the amendment as proposed. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
Believe that does not pass. And so on to the main the main resolution. Any discussion on that? Commissioner Elper?
Yeah, thanks. So to the main resolution, again, we talk about this resolution as a legacy mark that we're leaving for future generations. And I ask, is it? What I see here really with the main resolution is that it's more of the same. It's looking at these roads through the same old lens when we so desperately need to approach parkways through a different angle. When I look at this resolution, I see that it is about improving pavement surfaces for driving through mill and overlays, filling potholes, surface activities. We're not reconstructing or adapting our parkways to new transportation needs or desires. We're not considering opportunities to convert some of these paved spaces back to natural areas or bluffland. Instead, we are cementing a road network that supports predominantly people who drive. And it's not just people who drive. It's people who drive regularly on our parkways, who commute long distances on our parkways, who drive over the speed limit on our parkways, and frankly, who take away the recreational character of these roads. And most certainly, a smooth road surface will induce additional demand, which will in turn speed up the deterioration cycle. Maybe a few more potholes would help discourage the driving habits that we are seeing today on our parkways and have the effect that we are unwilling as an agency to push for or implement things like chicanes, bump outs, traffic diverters, raised crosswalks, speed bumps, etc.
Sorry. Commissioner, I believe, Benet.
Thank you, President Forney. I'm really excited to support this amendment. I think there's a lot of work this resolution. A lot of work has gone into this, and we've taken, I think, a really deep dive to look at the needs here. And again, I said it in the last discussion, to me, operating and maintaining is different than improving or rebuilding, investing, capital dollars versus operating dollars. And what we have here is a really big gap in what is needed from an operations point of view. I'll also say, I know several people who have had significant car damage or tire repairs this year. One was my own daughter, and she got it taken care of by herself. I'm not that good a helicopter parent, I guess. And I don't know if that was a city street or parkway, but one was an employee of my sister's, and my sister owns a coffee shop, and the repair bill was like $3,000 or something like that, and this is a person that doesn't make a lot of money. So, I think that, and the other thing I'll say is that when you have a really significant underfunding of something, the way that things get prioritized, it's harder to do it via equity, for example, because you're doing worse first. Or the squeaky wheel gets the grease, no pun intended. So this will be a way for us to raise up the level of investment in the system, which is probably already getting paid for one way or another in total dollars and output, people's tires, right? This is money that's real that gets spent in a way that is stewarding the infrastructure that we were elected to steward.
Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you, President Forney. yeah, I couldn't agree more. Doing this saves our residents money. Like, full stop. And I would like to add, I'm curious if Commissioner Alper's ever tried to do the Minneapolis Triathlon, because trying to bike on West River Road, I've seen so many accidents and blowouts, and talk about blown tires on a bike. There's a legitimate injury to personal injury. And also running the Twin Cities Marathon on those roads. So it's not just about cars. These things need to be paved, unless we just want to uproot literally the entire city. So I obviously support this. I don't see space for the arguments against it, other than some sort of optical illusion of the world that isn't where we are. So this is not just about cars, it's about bikes, and I support it completely. I think that these are roadways. I could go on and on and on about the life of a single mother in using parkways, but I will spare you all. I just hope that we can make a solid push to the city and show that we are true to our word to stewarding this space that we have been charged with doing so. Thank you.
Commissioner Menz.
Thank you, President Forney. First of all, I don't like it when bikes are on the parkway, and I'm just going to say that because there's a bike trail right next to them, and I'm driving. So I don't know even why we have that infrastructure. And I hear Commissioner Alper loud and clear that, like, we are basically just rebuilding pavement, and that does not feel good. And I know that people need to get around. I wanted to ask staff, is there anything that we currently have on the books that prevents us from putting in, like, speed bumps, or in Mexico they call them topes, that, make sure that people are not driving very fast, and if they are, it's going to bump their car in a pothole way? Is there anything that prevents us when we reconstruct these things currently from putting in those speed measures, or would we need some sort of direction on that?
Chair Forney, Commissioner Benz, just kind of checking with staff. We're not really sure if there's anything precluding us from doing that. We'd have to look into it.
But if we were to look at this resolution, or, and we look into the parkways when we get funding, hopefully, board action would need to put that in there, or would staff just sort of maybe consider those options? And I know that this is what Commissioner Olson's amendment was speaking to, about kind of examining those things, but...
Chair Forney, Commissioner Benz, I think that there's a distinction between introducing speed control measures and a study of the parkway. There are some things we'd want to do in a study that would, if we're going to do speed control measures, and I would really want to look into that, because there are requirements for how speed studies happen and what the results will be. I don't want to pretend to know that we could tell you an answer tonight. I'd really need to look into it.
But they've never had speed control. Do we know? Can you look into if we've ever had speed controls along the parkways?
We can, Commissioner Menz, we can look into see if there have been in the past.
Okay, thank you.
I know that, for instance, that on East River Road there are crosswalks that kind of function as extended speed bumps. They're actually failing, and we've been requested to do some work to repair them. They actually fall in line with both crosswalks and probably some form of speed control, the way they're constructed.
Thank you.
Commissioner Olson, right?
Yeah, so when we first started talking about this, I was enthusiastic to support it, because I do think it's important to maintain what you have and the services you provide. But again, this context of, I heard the world we live in, that, we're living in some, I'm living in a world that's not reality. And that's true. I'm trying to help us move towards a reality that is not killing our earth, that is not destroying our health, that is not destroying our financial health. How is it reasonable that we expect the default mode of transportation to get from point A to point B to be something where you can go on a bump slightly wrong, and all of a sudden you lose your savings. How is that the smart way to run things? How is it smart to look at a system, see how much it is costing you, see how much it's been underfunded, and it's going to continue to be underfunded because the city doesn't have a magic pool of money, and say, we're not going to reduce any of it. We want all of it. How is that a smart way to govern? How is that a smart way to look at the future and say, you know what? Everything's good. The status quo is fine. It's not fine. It's not fine in a number of different ways. And so I cannot support this because it supports a harmful status quo. I will not just blindly follow a status quo that is leading us down a destructive path. And I know it's kind of small potatoes here, but we are, other governing bodies and other folks who make big decisions are having the same discussions and the same decisions and the same conversations over and over again, and it's death by 1,000 cuts. How many times I hear similar arguments at the Capitol from folks on the other side of the aisle saying that we can't afford to go for 100% renewable, that we can't do this isn't the way it is, you're crazy for thinking or hoping for a new world. It just drives me up a wall. And I really think we need to really smartly examine the status quo and the future we want to create. So that's where I'm at.
Commissioner Bennett?
Thank you. So traffic calming is allowed, and there is some on East River Parkway for sure. It has to be approved by the fire marshal. Also, I would say that the parkways are one gigantic chicane already, right? These aren't straight roads. These are curving roads, and they're one giant chicane. So, and then I guess I have to say that, I know that, that maybe there is no effort that's too small, but, for the climate, but this really would be small. And none, even if we decided to, come up with a plan to close parkways, by the time it would be implemented, we will be electric on our cars, bingo. And they will, the power that will, fill their batteries will also be that. And so what I think is really important for the 136 citizens that might actually listen to this meeting is to know that there are a couple of commissioners that do not want you to have cars anymore, and they know. So I'm not one of those commissioners. I recognize this as Minnesota, and we have them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Music.
Thank you, President Forney. I appreciate being given the opportunity to speak on this topic this evening. I would like to start my comments by just thanking all of the staff and my colleagues that have dedicated hundreds of hours of their lives to helping us get to a place where we can make an ask of this magnitude based on available information that backs up the fact that this has been underinvested in since the day we signed a cooperative agreement with the city for them to take this over, and that there is a desperate need for that to be adjusted, amended, and addressed. And I look forward to voting in favor of us adopting this resolution. I look forward to working with my colleagues to gain support for this work at the city council level and with the mayor's office, because it is incredibly important work to be done. So I hope that we can find a way to all support this, as well as support the other work that we're doing around reimagining the way the parkways work in the city. I thank my colleague from the 4th for pointing out that we have a very big ask at the state level to help us start greening our parkways in a significant way. So that we can prove to the city of Minneapolis that they're not the only ones that can treat stormwater on the roads, that we can do it too. So I look forward to taking a vote on this shortly here.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Just one quick other thought is I think the status quo that we have right now is potholes and failing roads. And so I'm excited to move beyond that status quo into functioning infrastructure. And my role as a commissioner, this is just kind of my approach to how I look at some of these issues, is I need to represent my residents And I have heard about the potholes. I have heard about our parkways. We've all experienced them ourselves. And so I think I have not heard, 50 years from now or 20 years from now, I want to see this, 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 and this. And I appreciate the visioning, and I appreciate that ideological perspective, but we have to start with crawl, walk, run, and that's what I am committed to as I respond to my constituents.
I'll just weigh in. I hear a couple voices here that are not supportive of this, and I certainly hope that you'll reconsider. One of the things I did encourage, I mentioned to Commissioner Olson, is that the possibility of staff creating something like a climate resiliency matrix. And so how we roll things out are how are we addressing climate change? How could these things be? I don't want to make it a part of this. I wish that he had included something like that in his amendment, but I do believe that that is the sentiment of this board, that we do want to truly look at climate resiliency. But the first thing is we need to move this resolution to be fiscally responsible. And so I really encourage everybody to support this. And so on that, not seeing any other lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Nay.
The resolution moves forward, and we are on to our next resolution. Commissioner.
I will move Resolution 2023-55, resolution requesting the City of Minneapolis provide dedicated sustainable stormwater utility fee funding at a rate of $2 per month per equivalent stormwater unit, with an annual escalation factor to support the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board's management of the MPRB-owned stormwater infrastructure on park property, the development and implementation of a capital program for water quality improvement projects targeting Minneapolis public waters, and the protection, restoration, and improvement of Minneapolis public waters.
I will second that with the note that the missing apostrophe is still missing from MPRB. Thanks.
Any discussion? Not seeing any lights. All those in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay, one nay. Okay. On then to our following resolution. If somebody would like to move that, please.
Oh, unfinished business.
I'll move Resolution 2023-42, a resolution approving bylaws for the Minneapolis Tree Advisory Commission.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion on that item? Commissioner Menz.
Yes, so we did send this back to the Tree Advisory Commission, and we did have a discussion about that at the meeting. It was determined, because there was an argument or a discussion around if there should be another arborist on the group. I was the sole dissenting vote. So I think that the only thing that I can say about this, I think that we should support the bylaws. I think we need bylaws for MTAC right now. I think that the group it feels like it's increasing almost in importance or in relevance with the public view. I don't know what Commissioner Musich's experience was. I know it was positive, and I know that there was some impact, but it's, I feel like with the emerald ash borer and different issues that are coming up, that this group is going to be really important, and bylaws and public meeting and following that structure is really important, and that's what we're working on. However, I will say that there is also this feeling around how we get to the next piece where we're having input coming from multiple different levels of the organization. That's my personal opinion. So, but the group was very unified, it was very organized, and they were like, we don't want to take that amendment under place. So I support these bylaws, and I'm looking forward to how we can include voices and how we can include the people who are interacting with constituents around trees and around those things on a daily basis, so that those voices are heard at MTAC. And that doesn't, these bylaws don't prevent that from happening. It just means that it might not be named in those bylaws. So I will be encouraging employees to make sure that we do that, that we're hearing from the constituent level and from the people who are on the ground interacting with constituents daily about what is happening with trees. So, thanks.
Commissioner Music.
Thank you, President Forney. I just want to verify that what's currently on the floor for consideration is the modified version that came out of the last MTAC meeting and not what we previously discussed. So if someone could clarify that for me. It looks like Secretary Ringgold has her light on.
Oh, sorry, thank you. Yes, Secretary Ringgold.
President Forney, Commissioner Musich, you should move the revised bylaws as an amendment.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
That's what I wanted to know. I would like to move the revised bylaws as an amendment to the item currently before us.
Second.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so did you want to speak more to that?
I don't need to speak more to this. I'm
Okay,
supportive of it.
Speaking then to the amendment, no? Okay, nobody else speaking to the amendment? Okay, then we will then vote on the amendment of the bylaws. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So on to the resolution, I believe, Commissioner Alper?
Yeah, thank you. I just have a quick question. I'm curious about how with the new set of, with the new bylaws, will that mean that a new appointment process will need to take place for all members?
No.
Or you see, how do they slot into the current slot into their new roles, or?
Want me to speak to it? Okay, I believe that what we will be doing now, that we will be adding on 2 new appointees that we would be drawing from the original list of applicants.
Okay, because the current list combined a couple districts, so wouldn't, and I'm blanking on which ones, but like 3 and 5. So would 5 also need to be reappointed? Because why not?
Well, I'm prepared to appoint, to fill the open positions that have been created, I guess is the word.
I think I could add some color here if you want to call me.
If you want to, okay, excuse me, Commissioner Musich, if you'd like to clarification.
Thanks, President Forney. So the seats that currently are doubled up, there is a member from either of the 2 districts is already appointed. So the district that doesn't have representation gets an appointee. And they will be selected from the list of people that applied to serve at the beginning of the year by the board president, once we adopt these.
Secretary Ringgold?
President Forney, the one thing I would add is that when we do the solicitation for applicants, we let them know that we will keep their application on file for an entire year in the event that a vacancy arises within a particular committee that they applied for. And so we have a custom of going back to that exact pool if a vacancy arises. We've had to do it for Bike Advisory Committee and others over time, and ask if any of those individuals would like to be appointed. So that would be consistent with past practice.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Do we know if we have applicants from the missing districts?
Yes.
We do. Thank you.
And I am prepared tonight to make those announcements.
Great, thanks.
Not seeing any other lights, then on the resolution, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we now have a study item, I guess we should say, anyway, of celebrating 140 years, our parks, our stories. And so we have, yay! Angela and Rachel are here to talk with us about this wonderful celebration.
Hi, President Forney and Commissioners. Thank you for having us today. Let's see if I can get that going. Okay. My name is Rachel Bosch. I am the manager for Spark Studios.
And I'm Angela Salisbury. I'm the archivist and record specialist.
And we are both serving as co-chairs for a new committee to recognize and celebrate 140 years. So we're also here representing the other staff members who are on that committee. And today we just wanted to tell you about this project. We also wanted to encourage you to participate, get some of your feedback, and also share a bit about our process and what we're looking forward to.
So, celebrating 140 years, Our Parks, Our Stories, is a project that celebrates the Park Board's 140th anniversary this year. What we're doing is we are building a community archive. So we are providing or setting up opportunities to engage with our communities and provide storytelling opportunities. And we're looking to shape the next chapter of our history. As the archivist, I am often asked questions about the history of our park system, our parks, and some of our properties. And what I can provide is the history of the organization. We're an institutional archives. We have great record keeping, board records, property records, things like that. What I can't often share are personal recollections and stories of people and their experiences in the park. People who lived in properties that are now parks weren't parks before. So we wanted to fill that gap and provide an opportunity for people to share their experiences and their relationships with the parks. So on April 3rd, in recognition of that date in 1883, that the public referendum, which sort of secured the park board, we launched this storytelling project. We launched our website and the storytelling tools, which are now available online on our website, minneapolisparks.org/140 years.
So who can participate in this project? It is for everyone. It is for commissioners. It is for staff. It is for community members and organizations, park users, youth in our recreation centers, and we also hope to include stories about nature, animals, land, all ages, all departments citywide. Here on this slide featured is Reggie, who is a park keeper at Farview. He was one of the first stories that we've collected. Very simple story, but super impactful about how many years he has been documenting sunrises when he's going to work and starting his shift of the day. So he goes to the top of Farview Park, and he's even started to learn about the ways that it changes and the colors are changing depending on the weather that day. So very simple story, but also just demonstrates not only is he a dedicated staff member, but just the way that the parks impact his own well-being and experience every day on the job. And how our strategies for collecting and sharing these stories, sorry, I keep hitting the mic too hot. So we have to approach this in different ways and using different methods if we want to get multiple perspectives and if we want to broaden participation on many levels. So one of the ways is through storytelling activities that we will activate across the park system in recreation centers, working with existing staff. And one example, Spark Studios, we will be producing a couple of narrative media projects this summer. We're working with the Green Team to do like a sound art video in the gardens, just kind of about memories in nature. And then we also are working with KSMR, the radio station at Phillips Community Center, to do like a People in the Parks podcast where youth will go out and with staff will capture stories of people in the parks.
And we'll also be highlighting stories from our archives. We'll be putting together some photos, historic material that will be a trivia slideshow at the reach devices that are in all of the rec centers. Those will play on loop and be available for recreation staff to to put up as content. We're also taking a version of that that will be played before the Music and Movies in the Park commercial. So that will be something that visitors can look at and sort of quiz themselves and have some fun with. We're also bringing forward profiles of staff and commissioners and volunteers, and we'll share those on social media and our website as we bring them together. We had coming up next on deck will be Alice Dietz, who had a really incredible 40-year career in recreation from 1916 to, I think, 57. You might know her as the staff person who directed the pageants in Lindell Park, but she was also really instrumental in expanding programming for women, youth, mostly girls in the recreation programs that were really just kind of like growing at that time. Another one on the docket is Commissioner Ed Solomon. Found some really wonderful photos of him in the archives, so we're going to bring his story forward as well.
And then to collect stories more broadly, we've created a story form on that webpage that we just shared with you, where anybody could submit a story. It could be anonymous, and then that story will be documented and become part of this collection and this archive that we're creating. We have translated it into multiple languages, and it's available there online. We'll also take that form out into spaces and events this summer to facilitate stories. And we've created a QR code and are trying to spread the word as much as possible, and also empower people like you all to bring forth stories that you know of. Obviously, rec centers are going to be a huge asset for collecting community members' stories. Anything I miss?
Sounds great. So what's next for MPRB? We are looking to you and all staff to help us find and share personal stories that make up our park system. This is a bit of a call to action. We are hoping that you will all submit your story. We want to know why you do this work, why you're here, or an experience that you had. It could be short, it could be detailed, whatever you want to share with us. I think it would be really wonderful to include. We're going to explore some of these stories and share them at an end-of-year showcase. We're calling it a showcase. We're not really sure what it looks like yet because we don't have our stories yet. But we're hoping that we'll have some really rich material, and we'll have a venue where we can share those with the public and with staff and sort of highlight some of these really wonderful things. And then lastly, we're going to create this community archive project. So we're going to need a little bit of support there. This community archive will become an archival collection. It'll become a collection of the archives that will be available for researchers, future generations, and historians that are interested in exploring who we are in this moment in time. This has been done in other places. A community archives is a collection of voices and oral histories. It can be multimedia. And so we're prepared to set that up as a research collection and make it available for future students of MPRB history. Yeah, so I think that's wrapping up our presentation. We're happy to take questions if you have any of those for us.
Thank you. Very exciting. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you, President Forney. You mentioned one person that has a park named after them as being a story that you're going to highlight. Do you intend to do the same for all parks that are named after people with a park connection?
Thank you, President Forney and Commissioner Musich. That's a great question. I will say we are kind of a little bit building the boat at sea, and we've launched this project very quickly so that we could do it appropriately on April 3rd. So I think that in terms of curation of stories, we would love support and guidance on that, and we are going to utilize the committee that we have of staff who come from different departments in the park system to highlight different stories. But I'm not sure yet. There's so many stories to share that I think the idea was really to mix everything that is more historical to present day, and I think to do that, we might not be able to touch upon every park that was named after somebody.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Schaefer.
I'm just going to say maybe you want to limit to 140 stories.
Any other lights? I'm so excited about this. I really am. And I just need you to know that I did put out the notification of this and have gotten several people who've indicated that they have stories they would like to share. So as far as either me connecting with you all or anyway, whatever. I appreciate that, that connection or link or whatever is there. And just for you all to know, as far as the funding of this potential, another book, something like that, we will need to have some support financially for that. So if anybody has any ins on that, we are looking for that opportunity. And as they've indicated, we are shaping this as we speak in a lot of ways. So hopeful we're going to have some sort of a little bit more, shall I say, larger celebration possibly in this fall. So anyway, Vice President Smith.
Thanks. I think this is really awesome. So thank you all for, coordinating and trying to compile all the stories. I think it'll be really interesting, excuse me, because with the 140 years in 1883, there were lots of people that were denied access to the park. So there's a really ugly side to who we are. And so pairing that to where we are today, I think is really important. And one other just kind of point of information or opportunity is some of these really cool events that we do in our parks with families where you have multi-generations, it may be advantageous of some of the young people from our Spark studios to be able to capture short stories in person, whether that's like a 50-second Instagram clip that we can later share and archive forever. So I appreciate you all doing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Smith.
Any other questions? Yes, I look forward, as I put it, it's the amplified and the unamplified. That's what we're going to be talking about. I get very excited about this. And as Vice President Smith said, there's a lot of stories that have been untold. And so I appreciate your work. On that, then, I am going to recess the full board and go on to the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee. And who is going to be chairing that today? Yes, Co-Chair Aveni, please, take it away.
Noting the time is 6:45, I'd like to call the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee to order. Secretary, will you please take the roll?
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Vice President Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Menz. Here. Co-Chair Olson.
Here.
Co-Chair Abene.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Would someone move the agenda for approval, please?
So moved.
All those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The agenda is approved. We have no minutes.
Yep.
We do.
Oh, I'm always look at the old one. Okay. Would somebody move the minutes from November 30th?
So moved.
All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. We only have one thing on our agenda today, but it's kind of a big thing, and we're going to call forward a cast of characters to come and give us a briefing on the status of the 2023 state legislative session. Please come forward.
Thank you, Co-Chair Abeni and Co-Chair Olson. We thought, and it was actually Brian's great idea, but to give you guys kind of a lay of the land or where we are in the middle of session, they just went on a short legislative break and have been doing everything all at once, fast and furious, as I'm sure Commissioner Olson is very familiar with. It's been the quickest, the busiest session in my time of working with the state legislature. Where we are right now is the House and Senate are passing they got the joint targets agreed to early, and that was with the governor, the House and Senate leadership. And the respective bodies are coming up with their own versions of their omnibus budget bills to meet those targets. They are passing them out of the committees in the finance committees, and today, in fact, the House Legacy Bill passed on the floor. Representative Jamie Long gave us a shout out about the turtle pollinator habitat project that we have in the Lessard Sam's funding. So that was great. And so now what will happen is the House and Senate will pass their versions of the budget bills, then they will appoint conferees, they will go to conference and come up with an agreed upon package. And this, what Frankie put together, which is fabulous, is this blue sheet that you can kind of see what the funding differences are now in the House and Senate vehicles for our different funding avenues that are in here. There's also I think it's a $2 billion bonding target. And so they've been holding numerous hearings on those bills, and Carrie Christensen testified on our Grand Rounds project, and she did a great job. And Dan Elias testified in the House and the Senate on our Cedar Riverside request, and also did a fabulous job on those. Do we want to go through each of these? Okay. So, I mean, you can see the LGA number in the House. We don't have a Senate number yet in the tax bill. The O&M money and lottery and lieu money, the one-time parks funding money, this is all in the environment omnibus bills. And there, you can see like the O&M increase in the House continues for both years of the biennium. It is only 1 year in the Senate proposal. The governor had one-time Metro Parks, it's called Modernizing Metro Parks, and it's pretty broad in terms of what we could do with that funding. And it's a $1 million difference between the House and Senate bills for that. There is $9 million in the House bill for Metro Regional Park EAB removal, so that would have to apply to trees that are in our parks or on our parkways. So this would not be private residential. But there is $21 million in the House bill for the DNR relief program, grant program, and there's $18 million in the Senate bill for the DNR relief program. And there has been talk about that being a potential avenue for grants for private residents that need financial assistance for those tree removals, and we've heard a lot from that. And in fact, was it yesterday or Tuesday, in one of the city council meetings, Councilmember Ellison asked staff about that potential pot of money for that, and they also said they're hoping that could be a grant program that I think it would be that we would apply for, and then come up with a way to distribute that for residents that are in need. Let's see. The legacy money is pretty much the same in both bills. Today the youth employment funding, so it's an earmark for us for $750,000 in both years of the biennium. That passed out of Senate Finance Committee today, and it was amended to remove the deadline on when that money needed to be spent. So it's a one-time appropriation, but it's open-ended, which is great in both of those bills. We have 3 projects that are recommended in the LCCMR bill, which Adam Arvidsson worked on 2 of these, and Mary Lynn Polsher worked on the BioBlitz bill, so it's exciting that we have all 3 of those projects in that bill. Lessard Sams, I mentioned, was in the legacy bill, and that Representative Jamie Long called out, and then in fact, after the latest forecast, they increased that by $25,000. And then these are the bonding, these are the 2 of our individual projects, and then we're very hopeful to get some money for the Metro Regional Parks, because we did not get that money last year, and I know planning has had to revamp our CIPs and all of that to adjust for that lack of funding there. Do you guys have something else? And Tom Workman's here as well.
Tom Workman's here, and Frankie Brian Rice, lobbyist for the park board. So there's just obviously a lot going on. I hope you're all paying attention. Frankie diligently gets out a Friday report to not only you, but members of the delegation. It really has been an exceptionally busy session. As you can see, I think things are, there's $17 billion that the legislature will be appropriating, even more if they get into a bond for funds. So we've worked very hard. The staff's worked very hard. I'm hopeful on a number of fronts. Just, you know, the LGA dollars, the House Property Tax Division has recommended $100 million in permanent increases in LGA. The Park Board, city would get a, well, I could spend a long time on the LGA formula is not advantageous to first-class cities. It just isn't. At one point, Minneapolis and St. Paul accounted for almost 35% of those LGA dollars. It's now less than 20%. It's just how that formula works. It's a tax-based aid formula, and it's designed to help communities with dying tax aid, and that means that 70% of the money is going to greater Minnesota, not to the metropolitan area. But the House did have an approach which is helping the suburban communities out. So that's to Chair Gomez's credit. But it is fundamentally important to this system. It's about a $1 million increase in LGA, and basically the last 4 or 5 years, you've seen a decline in LGA, which means you had to raise property taxes to make up for that. So that's a significant move in terms of a long-term system there, and that's something I'm sure when you get on your budget stuff will get noticed. I mean, it's $1 million more in base funding to the system. Hopefully it keeps up. On the O&M issue, I know this board's talked a lot about taking care of what you've got. The good news is short-term, short-term money, Rick Hansen, the House Chair, has been really strong on helping us on that issue, and I think it's something that the staff and the board should start thinking about now, about how you could spend $5 million in O&M. There's always been this tendency on the board to take money and put it into capital projects, which isn't a bad thing, but I've heard you commissioners talk about the need to take care of what you got. And there might be some creative ways, and I think you got to think about them now because the money will start flowing, is what could you do to maintain things with these dollars over a short-term period of time, over the next 2 years. But, you know, of course, that's difficult, right? I mean, if you go on, you can't hire a whole bunch of workers for 2 years and then lay them off. But I'd really encourage the board and the staff to say, okay, you've got a big influx of money coming in a 2-year period, $10 million, that is going to be for operations and maintenance, but it's almost going to be a one-time infusion in operation and maintenance. And I think you need some creative thinking about how that can be done. I have encouraged the leadership, Senator Dietzick, to say that rather than spend all the money in a 2-year period, if they said you could spend it in a 4-year period, it might be a way of elongating the dollars so that you could phase it in more. I mean, you just can't all of a sudden go out and say, let's hire new workers July 1st. I don't think there's that kind of pool of workers out there that are there, but there might be. The modernization funding that the governor's recommended and both the House and Senate are supporting is going to get divided up based on the bonding formula that applies to the Metro Park system. We get around 22% of those dollars. So again, that's probably going to be another one-time source of money. And what does it mean to modernize? Yeah, I'm serious. The reason I asked for this meeting is we got 6 weeks to say how we can figure out this money. And if there's a tweak we could do, I don't know, maybe you even see if you can't use the money for potholes. I'm not being facetious. It might be a possibility to deal with things.
Lily mentioned that today on the floor.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think we'd probably get a receptive audience to do that. We have spent a lot of time on EAB. The House, Pamela's been tracking what they're doing statewide. Representative Hansen's come up with another $9 million EAB. At one point, we had a $1 million earmark of that $9 million for our system. I testified in the House committee. You know, sadly, we're way out of the curve. This system's already spent, and our taxpayers have already spent $40 million on getting rid of trees for that levy that's stretched out over 8 years, $5 million a year. I mean, that works out to $100 a person that this city spent to deal with that disease. If you scaled that up to the state of Minnesota and said we're going to spend $100 a person in the state to get rid of EAB, that would be over $500 million. I mean, you could do a lot of stuff with that, and you know, no good deed goes unpunished, right? You know, our taxpayers spent $40 million, and I've been telling our legislators and others, we deserve at least some of whatever money they're going to do for EAB because we already made that investment. I don't know that we could get reimbursed, but we're certainly trying, but that's a bit of a challenge. On the legacy front, I mean, the other good news here is that's probably one of the best things we've ever done was pushing that program. The increase from last biennium to this one is going to be over $1 million, basically, when you work out the numbers. That's capital money for the regional system. Although we've always used it as capital money, again, I would tell this board the ability to use legacy dollars is not just capital. There's no reason why you couldn't say we're going to spend a quarter, a third, a half of it on operational costs. And that might be something the board wants to consider. Other systems do that, or programmatic things. I mean, if you're looking long-term and sustainable things, there's no prohibition to do it. We have done it because historically we never had this. I mean the park board, you have never had as a board the kind of those sources of capital things. We were land rich and capital short because we weren't getting money from the city, and the regional system did have a big influx of money, but it was more bonding. What these legacy dollars have done is provided a steady stream. We're now about halfway through that program that started after the 2008 election when the taxpayers, when the voters put it in the Constitution, so that's important. Obviously, some really big news on youth employment. Superintendent Bangora came over early in the session, talked to Representative San. She championed and got an earmark in for $750,000. Senator Champion's committee, Senator Mohammed also carried the bill, or Senator Farah did, but they worked together. Senator Farah actually met with him too. He deserves a lot of credit for making that request. Senator Mohammed's on the committee, Senator Champion's the chair. Again, if we haven't recruited these workers, we better get them in the door because the money's coming. And because the park board funded this program last year and you got general fund money, it used to be we would have to wait to see if we got the money and it's May, but kids are out of school in June. I mean, the good news that this board has done, Superintendent Bangora did that kind of in with the last board. There's now a stable set of funding, so you've got revenue coming in, but now you're going to have to scale up. I mean, and the worst thing to do is go and ask for the money, and then you don't spend it. It's like, okay, get lost if for the next time you come. I mean, if we've got to deliver on these things. And the superintendent made a very explicit promise to Representative Hassan and Senator Fatah about outreaching to the Somali community. Their research has showed that 90+% of the people we've had in the program have been youth, but they've been primarily African American youth, which is great. But we haven't had a lot of outreach to Somali youth. So I think that's something that's really on this board. We promised them that we would do that. So I think that's something that, as a staff, we have to follow through. And that's a pretty significant increase. Frankie points out in here it was $175 million is what we've kind of been cut down to. So you're going to have another over $500,000. The wage is going to be high, but that's there. And then Pamela talked about the LCCMR project. Those are things that your staff and planning have really worked on year after year to develop, and it's really good to see that. Pamela's been working with the new staff person there. The work on Lessard Sam, Senator Dibble is now in that committee. I hope we're putting in for projects in that area again too. And then we've had a good number. And now the bonding stuff is going to be very complicated. There's a bonding bill that's on the Senate floor that passed the House but didn't get any Republican votes in the Senate. That bill could literally pass at any time, and the bonding dollars may be changed, but at this point, there's a $2.2 billion cash bonding target. In fact, as we were sitting here tonight, we got a communication from the Senate bonding committee. We need to get some data in, and your staff, Mr. Schroeder, Mr. Arvidsson, Kerry Christensen, Dan, and have all been great at working with it. So I would guess next week we're going to start to see a bonding bill passed out. And then if that all wasn't enough, the tax committee is considering a Walls proposal to put $550 million in public safety aid as a one-time program. And it's a tax aid. It's under the tax committee jurisdiction. Chief Ohado, or Director of Park Public Safety Ohado, flagged that. The park board wasn't included in the formula as a city because it was only cities with police departments. Well, they were, but it would have been through the city of Minneapolis. Since Minneapolis has its own police department, we'd have to be like a sub-grantee. There's a number of other police agencies that aren't covered by that. And I think this amount of money has drawn a fair amount of attention. Now, that again would be like a one-time program, but obviously, maybe there's things we can do in the police department or other public safety. That's like I said, that's $100 a person. So that's a lot of these dollars become one-time things, and that's, frankly, kind of hard to accommodate in a government entity, and particularly in a short-term thing. So I think we're going to get you a report probably 6 weeks from tonight, because the last session will get done by May 21st, 22nd. Well, it'll end the midnight on the 21st, so it'll be, we'll be 2 days past it. We'll probably all be tired, but I think then you're really going to have to go to work on it. And I'd encourage the commissioners, I've heard you all talk about, taking care of what you got and maintenance stuff, and if you really believe that, the legislature is going to throw a lot of money at you, and you should figure it out. I don't know, Frankie or Tom, Pamela, if you want to, any comments?
Well said.
Yeah, well said. I don't have much to add. Just a lot of one-time money, not a lot ongoing. Oh, sorry. Most will be one-time money, not a ton ongoing, so plan to accommodate that. That's all I have.
Tom, any thoughts?
Well, just, this is Tom Workman, your lobbyist, one of them. Proud to be that. Commissioners, it's sort of the hot time right now with the conference committees coming in, and the Republicans struggling the best they can from about the 10,000-foot view on what is happening and what's going to happen. And so the conference committees are going to have to come together in the Democrat-controlled House, Democrat-controlled Senate. So what's going to happen? I do know there are some pretty significant differences in a lot of the bills, transportation and big money, big stuff flying around, so it has to all get whittled down. And 6 weeks from now, we're going to be geniuses for what has happened. But I'm optimistic. I think parks are doing well. I do get worried about one-time money. If a recession hits at the end of this year, what happens next year? What happens 2 years from now? What do we do? What does it look like? So I remain optimistic, but this is the bewitching hour that we're heading into with exactly what's going to happen in the conference committees and how those details are going to get worked out. So I think we're honed in. So.
Any questions or advice?
Yeah, okay, a couple lights went on. I'll start with 1 minute here. Commissioner Thompson.
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Benny. I was looking, thank you so much for that, and thank you for all the incredible work that you do. I'm sure it's exhausting. I'm just looking for some details about District 2's favorite project, which is North Commons, and I think it's MPRB's favorite project. I'm just curious because I noticed that there's different bills around. I was just trying to get updates as I'm reading this, and it's on Walls's proposal. But I'm just curious since we have you here, for a more clear picture about our requests
I
there.
can try to jump into that. We don't have a bill introduced on that. The governor has supported it. The local legislators up there have not been convinced on that project.
Thank you.
I mean, you need an author to get it pushed forward. Just to be blunt.
Yeah.
And there's other projects that the North Side's working on. The big one is V3, and there's some other nonprofit. There's been this huge welling up of, nonprofits, NGOs, non-government organizations, and the legislature's largely focused in persons of color that have not gotten a chance, and they are getting a chance, and that's great. And just across the board, groups that have been marginalized or not gotten to the table, they're getting to the table this time, largely because they're cash. A lot of projects that aren't government-owned aren't eligible for bonding, but are eligible for cash. So that's a big factor here. And as to the North Side, there was a story over the weekend. The V3 project is a $97 million project, and it's a big project.
It is. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson?
Yeah, just want to say thank you. I think you very succinct and hit everything well. I know committee staff doesn't really provide it, but it would be nice in kind of future times when we're going over this if we could see kind of percentages of the differences between what the funding is here and what we've had in the past or something like that. So just a little more context of,
Sure.
This is that.
Actually, we did that. If you look at the first column is calendar year 23, kind of our base level of operations.
Yeah.
So roughly, if you wanted to do kind of a quick score sheet, we might get as much as, on the front page, as much as $10 million more over what we had last year.
Yeah, I guess I was thinking further back than that even.
Okay, yeah,
But
no,
totally fine. I know that's a lot of work and stuff.
No, it's not. Actually, if you want that, we can get it to you. We've got a score sheet going back to 1983.
Okay.
So we'll get that to you. Yeah, I don't want to jinx it, okay, and I'm knocking on wood, okay, mostly this is the wood, because I'm not that smart, really, but it would be pretty hard to, the Timberwolves blew a 15-point lead last night, so maybe I shouldn't say anything. So,
please don't remind me.
I think that we're in pretty good shape.
Okay, yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I think, the numbers will look different, but overall, I think we're looking at some pretty good stuff. And even if it is one time, that can do a lot of good. So thank you for being there and making sure this is, we're present.
We appreciate your help too, Commissioner Olson, for kind of a guardian angel over there.
Commissioner Mentz?
Sorry, I'm good. My question was answered.
Commissioner Alper?
Thanks for recognizing me, as I'm not on this committee, but certainly interested in this topic. My question stems around the relief program and Emerald Ash Borer, and I just want to let you all know that I had a great meeting this morning with a constituent that I'm hoping will be appointed to the MTAC committee, John Cruz, and Green Minneapolis, David Wilson, this morning. And he shared that they wrote a letter for House File 2310, which I believe is the relief program.
Environment Omnibus Bill.
Oh, okay, thank you. But they wrote it about the relief program. And it has to do with assessed trees, dying diseased trees on private property, and asking to incorporate language about allowing money, the appropriation to be applied retroactively. So I just want to say I'm really excited about that, and I'm hoping that we are taking steps to be supportive of that.
The bills.
Great.
Representative Hanson and Representative Jordan, all sessions.
Great. Thank you.
Did you want to say that into the mic for the people watching on TV?
Sure, we have been, to Commissioner Alpert's question, we're well aware of the issue of Emerald Ash Borer, its effect on private citizens. We have talked to Representative Hanson, Representative Jordan, other of our legislators about it. We're working on it, and we'll continue to work on it. Hopefully, we'll get a result.
Thanks. And just to say that my memory was triggered, part of why I bring it up is I think I personally have received like 5 emails since 5 about establishing an EAB grant program. So as I imagine you have as well. So that's part of why I wanted to ask.
Commissioner Menz for real this time.
Sorry, I have not been sleeping very well, so I'm not doing a very good job yet. I did have a good, thank you so much for all of your work. I mean, it's got to be just a grind there. I was over at I've been at the Capitol quite a bit over the past couple of months for the work that my wife does. And then also I went for Skate Park Advocacy Day, which was really good. And I'm not sure what that means by future bonding. I think that assumingly means this year that could possibly come through, that they're looking for up to $18 million. And have you had any conversations with Dibble or the authors of those bills? Or is there any sort of, or do we just kind of hit that on the side?
Commissioner Menz, they did testify regarding, in the Senate, regarding the skate park funding, because it's not in the House bill. And what is his name? Paul
Forsling.
Yeah, and I did run into him afterwards, and we talked a little bit. And they're hopeful to get that money. And I know that they did change the language to apply to park districts or park boards in there. So hopefully it'll end up in the combined bill.
That's what we're hoping for. If you guys weren't there, it was a really good day. I mean, it was the first time that there was ever skate park advocacy. I'm not a skater, let me be clear, but they're good amenities to have, and we have a couple of them in our activity plan. So I think that was it. And then also, actually, I have one question. The $12 million for missing links, I was hearing a $6 million. I know we've asked for 12. We're still asking for 12.
We've always asked for 12.
Okay.
They, in a vehicle that was traveling around, they had us in there at 6, but that was their determination, not our ask.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Some confusion around that.
We need 12.
Yeah.
I mean, more, but yes.
That's our ask. I mean.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
About $5 billion in ask, so.
Yeah. Commissioner Schaefer?
Yes, this is not our official legislative agenda, so you can say pass if you prefer not to answer. But what is your high level from the sky look on the cannabis situation?
No, that's workman's.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe knows. I don't know.
I think it's a taxation.
I just have a logistical update, which is that they are hearing the bill, I believe, in House Ways and Means tomorrow, which would be its final stop before the floor.
Okay.
Unless they choose to refer it back to another
Okay.
policy-focused committee. I don't know if there has been a financial target established for it yet.
Okay. But back to Park Board's legislative agenda.
Actually, we might actually have an issue there about, because I know we want to talk about what happens.
Yeah.
We do have an issue. I did talk to the author. The police chief Ohio talked to the city attorney about whether or not, okay, let's assume it passes. Can you, right now, Park Board prohibits smoking tobacco in parks. And I know we did bring it up at the Metro Parks meeting. The other park agencies would also prohibit vaping, marijuana, smoking, all that other stuff in the parks too. So you might have that. If it passes, you might, it may be part of your legislative agenda or an aftershock of the session if it passes.
Thank you.
I
Commissioner
have a
Musich.
point of information on that
Yep.
topic. I'm not on this committee, so I appreciate being given an opportunity to speak. The current rule that we have in parks is that you cannot smoke or vape. It doesn't matter what product is being consumed. So right now, our rule would cover marijuana if it were to be legalized when it comes to smoking
I
or
don't think that's
vaping.
accurate, Commissioner. You might want to call your police
We
chief.
talked about this. as
Well, I
part of our-
I talked to the police chief.
Okay, I will discuss it with him further, but when we discussed this initially, the way that we phrased it was that we did not want people smoking in the parks, no matter what it was that they were smoking. So if we need to revise that rule, I'm happy to continue to have that conversation, but I thought it covered it already, so.
With all due respect, I think that it's a good question that you raised it, but I'm under the strong impression that the policy in place only applies to tobacco. But I'm.
Okay.
Is that right, Chief? He's checking. We'll get back to you.
Okay, excellent. No more lights. I would also just say thank you for this work, and I'm optimistic. You know, I'll also knock wood, but we still have a few weeks to go. But thank you very much, and thanks for the presentation. And with that, I'll adjourn the Legislative and Intergovernmental Committee.
The time is 7:19, and I'd like to call the Admin Finance Committee to order. May Secretary Ringo please take the roll.
Vice President Smith.
Here.
Commissioner Musich.
Present.
Commissioner Menz.
Present.
Co-Chair Thompson.
Here.
Co-Chair Schaefer.
Here.
You have a quorum.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? May I have a motion to approve the minutes of February 1st, 2023?
So moved.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. We have 3 action items this evening. May I have someone move the first resolution?
I'll move Resolution 2023-45. Resolution authorizing use of Minnesota State Contract Number 218090 with St. Croix Recreation Fund Playgrounds Incorporated in the amount of $315,039.54 to furnish and construct the playground improvements at Hall Park located in the North Service area of Minneapolis, and further recommending that the Board of Commissioners amend the 2023 capital improvement program to allocate $130,138 from the near north neighborhood portion of the Dibble-Hornstein Parkland Dedication Fund to complete the proposed project.
Thank you. Do any commissioners have any questions or comments about this particular resolution?
I have one question, if you will so call me.
Yes, Commissioner Menz.
So when we allocate money from the Parkland Dedication Fund, that's not increasing the amount. It's just, that's 130 out of the 310.
Director Arvinson is coming forward for a response.
Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz, maybe it's me, but might be Cliff. Can you, repeat your question?
So we're asking for the amount of $315,039. And then we're also asking to allocate $130,138 from the near north neighborhood portion. Is that in addition? So is it $445,000, or is it $315 and $130 is coming from the dedication fund?
Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz. It's actually getting us to the $315,000 amount.
Thank you very much.
Great. All those in favor of Resolution 2023-45, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. May I have someone move Resolution 2023-47?
I would move Resolution 2023-47. It's a resolution approving 3 one-year license agreements with Lime, Spin, and Vio, I hope I pronounced that correctly, respectively, for authorization to place equipment on MPRB property and permission to operate shared bike and scooter programs throughout the Minneapolis park system.
And I would like to request Director Olson to come forward and give us kind of a high-level, brief overview of this new contract.
You're still off.
Good evening, Commissioners. I can hear myself now. Chair Schaefer, Commissioners, I am here this evening and ask for your consideration of approval of 3 license agreements for the micro-mobility vendors who have been selected as a result of last year's compliance data for the city of Minneapolis and our surrounding jurisdictions slate of vendors who offer bike and scooter rentals as a shared mobility service. We have been working in collaboration with the City of Minneapolis, University of Minnesota, and other municipal partners to have a unified approach in providing micromobility across our region. These three vendors came forward as the top three. Actually, they were the top two plus Lyft Nice Ride, although Lyft Nice Ride, as has been made public, has backed out of this this venue or this municipality. And we took the next on the list who met our criteria for compliance and were able to provide offerings per the cities and the joint RFP. VO was the one that moved up on the list. So the other top two, I have to keep on refocusing my eyes every time I look down and look up. The other top two are Lime and Spin. We are working through the logistics of how things are a little bit different this year without Nice Ride. Nice Ride has been a longstanding partner and a service provider in our city. The infrastructure that Nice Ride had installed across the city, whether it be on park property, the university property, or city right-of-way, is being removed as we speak and throughout the rest of this month, now that we got rid of that pesky snow. So we are moving forward with relocating some of the infrastructure that remains that was gifted to us from Nice Ride, which are some lightweight bike rack stations, working with the City of Minneapolis to identify some areas of need. Some of those may include park areas, but also looking to the vendors to help fill some of that need as well, because we recognize, or the bike and scooter vendors, we recognize that we do need parking infrastructure to kind of supplant what is missing because we're removing those Nice Ride features. However, we are going to be in kind of a net zero situation here because there are going to be fewer vehicles brought into the market, and we are going to have about equal fewer parking spaces or parking infrastructure. So I think that we're going to be in a good position there. There was a request that this go to committee and full board in the same evening so we can align with the launch within the city. And I am happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Commissioner Musich. Thank you very much. So could you highlight for us what the differences will be between, other than the brand names on the equipment, between what people have come to know as the way that this all works to what the future state of micromobility is here in Minneapolis? Like, I understand you're not going to be able to get into all the details, but if you could just at a high level help us understand what's different.
Sure, certainly. Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Musich. You're right, I can't get into all of the details because there are way too many to consider that I don't even know the answers to. However, I do know how this will work as far as the bikes are concerned. That's the big difference. So the Nice Ride bike infrastructure that we were accustomed to in the city, the green bikes, the classic pedal bikes, that's all going away. But the classic pedal bike model, the model that we had here, really has gone away across this country. There's really not a market that offers that version of the shared bikes program anymore. With advances in technology, really you see more of the e-pedal assist bikes, and so Class 1 and Class 2 e-bikes. And we will be hosting both in the city through two of the three vendors. Lime and VO will be providing the e-pedal assist and the Class 2 e-bikes. The differences here are we won't have that check into the kiosk and check out of the kiosk. Instead, we'll be working off of that Lock 2 system that we've already had in this market. So if you're familiar with what we had the last few seasons, we had green bikes, we had black bikes, we had scooters. The green bikes are those old classic pedal bikes. Those are going away. We are having the equivalent of those black e-pedal assist bikes that are going to be a big part of the fleet that's going to come to our market this year. Those have lock 2 devices on them. So that means that there's a bike lock that's connected right to the vehicle, right to the bike. That will then, there will be a requirement as part of end of ride, a parking requirement that those be locked to sanctioned areas, right? So I believe that's like a particular type of traffic signposts or bike racks or those type of parking infrastructure. Trees not allowed, as an example, but there are, areas that are allowed and aren't allowed. As part of the end of ride and ending the charge to the user, that is required that is proven through it. And I actually saw, I was in where was I? I was in a suburb the other day, and I saw a scooter out, and I saw a guy taking a picture ending his ride, right? So there are features that require that. The other thing that we'll see that's different this year, so it's different but the same, right? We've already been doing those black bikes. So we're just getting rid of the green, sticking with that black bike model where you're riding, you park it in a sanctioned area, and you use the lock that's on there to lock to. The other different vehicle that we'll see this year, and in a much smaller fleet amount, are these Class 2 e-bikes, and they're more of like have a throttle. They're still pedal bikes, but they aren't. They're actually an accessible option for mobility needs, but they kind of throttle up, not requiring you to pedal. However, all of these vehicles, scooter, e-assist pedal bike, the throttle bike, they all have a cap. You can't push them beyond 15 miles per hour in any area. So even if you're coasting down a hill, there's going to be a resistance that's going to push back and keep you from getting up to a speed higher than 15 miles per hour. That is not the same for my bike that I have at home, right? I can coast down that hill on West River Parkway and I'm flying. But then I'm really in trouble when I go to ride back up. So those are some of the differences that you're going to see. I'm working really closely with colleagues at the city to determine parking needs, because we're really going to be tracking that to make sure that there's enough available parking based on trend that we see. Now, as you all know, I don't have a team that I'm working with here at the Park Board to pull this off. So I really lean on that relationship I have with City Public Works transportation folks, and they've been great partners. So we're going to watch that, but that's the real big difference. You're not going to see those stations with the green bikes. Instead, you're going to see these bikes locked to sanctioned areas around the parks.
Wonderful. Thank you for that overview. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Thompson?
Thank you so much, Co-Chair Schaefer, and thank you so much, yes, for that overview. Just a couple of things that are concerns. Certainly, we talked about last year and didn't quite get a lot of ability to fit that, and that is speed limits on the parkways, on the bike paths, on the pedestrian paths. And I don't know, I mean, my colleagues can maybe tell me, but there's massive, I'll just say clutter on Victor Memorial Drive specifically, where people will just dump them. And so I'm curious to have a little more understanding of sanctioned areas, because it really, people just don't like it up on the, I won't speak for other parts of the city, but on the north side, District 2, it's just an eyesore. And so without the docking bays that are very clear of where it's supposed to go, I'm curious more about what the sanctioned areas are, and if we have, last year we tried the geofencing, and it didn't quite work out, but I'm curious if we're attempting that again this year, and if you could just speak to both of those.
Certainly, Co-Chair Schaefer, Co-Chair Thompson, Commissioner Thompson. We've talked a lot about speed zones, so I'm going to start there. I'm going to start with the end of your question. There are some struggles that we have with the geofencing that goes along with a speed zone. There is a slush factor, and it's not a straight line. Anywhere from 15 to 30 feet within any given area, one way or the other, this geolocated fence has this kind of area where it could or could not kind of take, right? So when we were looking at, you brought up Victory Memorial Parkway, we were looking at Victory Memorial Parkway as an option. And sadly, the city street runs just too close to the pathway that runs through the boulevard on Victory Memorial Parkway to give us that slush factor that we need to not impact the speed that a bike or a scooter, in this case, would end up being able to travel on the road. So both the scooters and the bikes are allowed to be used on the roads, and because on those city right-of-ways, they're running just a little bit too close, there's not a great way in that particular instance to create a geofence on that walk or that path that runs through that boulevard. I took a look at a number of locations and worked with this through with the vendors to try to figure out, is there a way that we could put one here? What if we shifted it over this far? Would it be able to grab? In that particular location, we couldn't. I've been talking to the vendors as recently as this afternoon about other areas where we can put in geofences for speed zones. The speed zones are 10 miles per hour. Right now, these vehicles are all topped out at 15 miles per hour, so it's a matter of 5 miles per hour. In some areas, we can make it work. In other areas, with its juxtaposition to roadways and parkways, it becomes actually a safety concern, a bit of a hazard. So there is an unsafe distraction for a rider that happens if they were to hit a speed zone on a roadway, even if there's signage or warning, where all of a sudden they could be scaling down or being able to scale back up in speed. And if there's a differential of the cars and their speed that they're driving on that same roadway and these shared bikes or scooters on that roadway, there are increased chances or risk of accident or injury. So for a 10-mile differential, so if we were to go down to a 10-mile-per-hour speed zone and it drifted into a roadway, there's a 5 times more likely incident of a crash or of an accident. If we were to do it, even with the 5-mile differential that we have, with the 15-mile-an-hour scooters and a parkway that's 20 miles per hour, there's still 2 times more of a risk that there's going to be injury because we have that differential in speed. And I know that our parkways are 20 miles per hour. I don't know if the cars on the parkways are always driving 20 miles per hour. And so that even increases that differential. So the faster the cars are going on any given roadway, and the slower the scooters or the bikes are toggled down if they are in a speed zone that drifts into a roadway, it puts us in a position where traffic disruption and injury are really a risk.
Can I ask 2 just follow-up questions about that before we talk about clutter?
Sure.
Are you talking about North York in Robbinsdale because I obviously know the drive incredibly well, and the bike path is on essentially the Robbinsdale side is where we pave the path, and the only street that's near there is North York. That's what we're talking about, so not Minneapolis City, Robbinsdale City?
Right, that particular one, yes, when we were looking at a speed zone for that location. But as it turns out, when we look at speed zones, especially along roadways, so where we have bike paths that run along roadways, which is pretty much all over the city, in almost all the cases that we were looking at, they're just the juxtaposition of those paths and the roadways are just a little bit too close. Pull it off.
So, correct me if I'm wrong. What I'm hearing is that the general sentiment around geofencing is that we're deferring to the safety of the e-bike renter against cars versus pedestrians against the e-bike.
Co-Chair Schaefer, Co-Chair Thompson, I understand what you're saying, and I can't say that that's necessarily the prioritization here. What I'm stating is where we are, and the best practice in application of speed zones is to not drift into a roadway where there's vehicular traffic, where there's like cars and trucks.
Got it. And any more specificity on the sanctioned areas?
Sure.
Thank you.
Co-Chair Schaefer and Thompson, the specified areas are bike rack areas, bike parking, corrals, hitches, things that we would normally lock a bike to, and also, I believe it's regulatory signposts, but nothing other than that. So those are the areas where people are allowed to end a ride and use the lock to device. In the event that there's clutter, we have a process for that. So I'm in communication with our field staff, whether it be asset management, recreation, otherwise, providing them a tool on reporting. The tool that we use for reporting it's a smart sheet that automatically, once you select or once you hit submit on this kind of compliance report, if you will, like there's clutter, this is not parked right, this is in the wrong, like there's too much stuff here, it will automatically ping the vendor at the same time logging for the city's kind of complaint log that it happened. So it's this whole compliance thing that I mentioned in the beginning. This is how we selected the vendors. They had the best compliance rate because they had the least complaints. Our staff, two of our staff that work in the Northeast service area and along the riverfront in downtown were two of the highest users of the smart sheet and provided some really awesome data for us in allowing us to not only determine whether or not a vendor complied, but also allowing for quick remedy of problems. So the more it got used, the more we saw problems decreasing because the vendors were kind of held to a higher standard and they were doing things in a way that we expected them to. And then the riders actually, too, were alerted because they were alerted from the vendor that they had done something wrong. So we saw it to be a really positive thing. And I can certainly be sure to provide that tool again to folks in your neck of the woods, too.
That'd be great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
I would like to ask, how does staff kind of reconcile the allowing 15 miles per hour on our 10 mile an hour bike paths?
Co-Chair Schaefer, can you provide me with a little bit, how do we reconcile it? Can you explain that?
If the e-bikes can go up to 15 miles an hour and we have a speed limit of 10 miles per hour on our bike paths?
Co-Chair Schaefer, I would have to ask about, enforcement, but my understanding is it's a really hard thing to enforce speed on a bike path.
Oh, yeah.
And much like these shared mobility vehicles are not the only users of these bike paths. And it is a hard thing to enforce. I don't have a great answer.
I mean, it's a question I think we should think about. Either we need to raise the speed limit on our bike paths, or we should require that certain machines in certain areas, if they're maybe too close to the road, if we can't geofence, okay, then VO, you can put bikes here that have a cap of 10 miles an hour and no more. And it's kind of known these are the recreational vehicles in this section of town. To me, obviously, the geofence is the better way to go, but I think as we continue to see the increase of e-bikes, we're going to kind of feel this push from, because our ped paths are so close to the bike paths, and we want to encourage this kind of transportation. But yet, I think we're going to kind of start to feel growing pains in this, particularly if we, have more personal e-bikes, where we can't control the speed and they can go much more than 15 miles an hour. Yeah. So I guess that would be something I would just encourage staff to think about is, are we being inconsistent if we're allowing a vendor to have a 15 mile per hour? Are we disregarding our rules, so to speak? And not that our rules can't be flexible, but I think it's something we should talk about and consider. Commissioner Abene?
Thank you, Chair Schaefer. I'm not on this committee, but I'm glad you mentioned that. And I think it's on my mind that there are all kinds of different types of devices and vehicles, as you're calling them, out there now. In fact, I saw a person on what looked like a skateboard, but I don't think he was kicking with his foot, and he was in the parkway slaloming like this, and there was a line of cars behind him, which maybe that's okay. But I think that we're going to need to start clarifying some of the ordinance ordinances, I think that could be something that this board, I would hope we can maybe take up, and maybe we can start talking about that in our retreats a little bit, to kind of catch up to this. Because as a person that uses all of this system with my feet, with wheels, and with a car, I want to know how I'm supposed to interact with these other things. And I've heard that I have some constituents that are very frustrated by conflicts with these types of emerging devices. And the people, maybe it's the communication style, or maybe it's the people's receptiveness to hearing, hey, this is the walking path, but there's some conflict, I think, that's being created here. So, but otherwise, thanks for your work organizing this contract.
Commissioner Menz, sorry if I missed your light earlier.
You didn't.
Okay.
No. Thank you for recognizing me. I have a question around, I'm really happy that it's a one-year contract. I mean, have we done anything larger than a one-year contract with these vendors?
Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz, no, we are doing one-year licenses with the option to renew contingent upon compliance, working through the city. Previous to this cycle, we had actually only done them one at a time. And now we went through that joint RFP process and looked out a little bit further, but with kind of stopgaps in there so we could reassess and determine if we were going to extend the option for a license to any given vendor.
So in these instances where we have multiple models of transportation, have there been studies done around like two-way traffic, one-way traffic? Like is certain traffic patterns safer than others? Because I'm thinking of the River Road right now, and I'm thinking about, and I don't personally like, these modes of transportation, but they're a reality, and we can figure out how to work them. But what I'm wondering about is there ways that are safer than others besides speed limit?
Co-Chair Schaefer and Commissioner Menz, there may very well be. This is not my area of expertise.
Okay.
This is where I would lean on my colleagues at the city who, this is what they do. And I can certainly pose that question, so it's something that we continue to consider, to the point of your colleagues up here who have provided some feedback. There are certainly things to consider here, and I'm happy to ask that question.
So I think that, and for my colleagues on the board, I mean, where my brain is going right now is we've been talking about these parkways, and we use parkways to transport vehicles, which we're going to continue to do. But it does concern me when there's two-way traffic of vehicles and there's one-way traffic. I mean, like, maybe there is room as we increase our funding and think about the parkways that we think about it differently. We listen to the dissenting part of that and also work in the mode of transportation piece. And, it's probably a lot easier to ride if we have multiple lanes for different vehicles, then maybe it can be safer. So thank you for all your work. I talk too much.
Thank you, Commissioner Menz, and thank you, Director Olson, for all of your work on this. I really appreciate it. I just want to also say that it is a concern in my district along the riverfront, and particularly from 13th to 3rd, which we had designated in the amendment last year that really had to have the kibosh, both Victory Memorial Parkway and along the riverfront there. And so I just would continue to encourage you in this good work and the city to really think about how can we make these particular areas that are going to become even more loved and more dense with people safer. And I think that we have an understanding of where those areas are within our system. And I would think the vendors really want to meet our needs to the best of their ability. So I think everybody wants a win-win here. So I just would encourage you as we look to next year to hopefully allow our regular legislative process on this as well, and not have to move it the same evening forward, to allow more input, because I know some people along the riverfront missed the process. So. But I do want to thank you for this work, because I see real improvements in this contract as far as the staggered outflow of the machines and reducing some of the high concentrated areas. I think downtown went from 38 to 34%. So these little tweaks are all things that these one-year contracts really leverage for us. So I just want to tell you thank you. All those in favor of this resolution, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That resolution passes. May I have someone bring forward our last action item?
Yeah,
I'll do
bring-
it. Go, you go, you go.
Okay, I'll move Resolution 2023-64, resolution approving a 5-year concession agreement with the Minneapolis Water Taxi LLC to expire on December 31st, 2027.
Thank you. And we have Director Stenzel here to give us the story.
Thanks, Co-Chair Schaefer. So the action before you is enter into a 5-year concession agreement with the Minneapolis Water Taxi. If you're not familiar with the Minneapolis Water Taxi, they do river tours up above the falls. It's a small company, been around since about 2017. We've worked with them through the permitting process, more of as a pilot than anything to see if this would work. Last year, then COVID hit in between, and then last year we worked with them really close on where we could dock. So this agreement would include docking at Boom Island. Their operation would go out of Boom Island. One thing about their operation is they're a leader in clean energy. So their boats are 100% electric powered. There's no emissions. They're virtually quiet, and they rely on solar to regenerate. They do use a little bit of shore power to keep up with demand, but for the most part, it's solar and it's off the grid. They operate 3 boats. They carry about 6 people in each one of them. We're really excited about this program. It really affords an opportunity for people to get out on the river, particularly in the fall or spring or any time of the year. And I've got 2 of the operators here tonight, Captain Dan Trilla and Captain Greg Hoseth. Actually, this is kind of Greg's baby. He's the one that started this program and brought it to us a couple years ago. And like I said, we've been piloting it, and it's been working really great. It's a great opportunity. So with that, I will stand for questions. And like I said, I've got the captains here tonight as well, if there's any questions for them. But that's what it is.
Any questions from commissioners? Commissioner Menz.
Well, it's kind of a comment and a question. So I know that Shane's worked really hard to get this over at Boom Island. And so are the houseboat will also be docked at Boom Island? Is that?
No.
Okay.
That's a separate issue that I will divert to Commissioner.
Well, we have
Rice. But there's 3 boats, and there's a houseboat that's not for tours or anything. There's a houseboat in the agreement. It's a small one. It's not any of the ones that exist.
Okay.
And that services the office and for supplies and that to be in there. It was either that or build a kiosk on shore, and for safety and just everything, it made more sense to do it on the dock so we can secure the dock with lighting and fencing and that type of thing, which they'll be providing. So that the quasi houseboat really is just more of a
like
tiny
office
little.
space.
It's really small. It's an office space. It's not even licensed to take people out on or be on. It really is just an office space that we said that they could use for that.
And then in the agreement, I couldn't see that. Does this give the Minneapolis Water Taxi the sole concession area of that, or are there other boats that? Is there another company that could ask for an agreement at Boom Island, or?
Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz. There's never anything exclusive about any of this, any of the agreements that we do. But with that, why would we compete with ourselves? You know, we have an agreement. It's kind of like our concession agreements. You know, we have an agreement. If somebody came with another proposal, we would obviously look at it and see what if it's a direct competition, we already have a vendor. So why would we look to compete against our one vendor? If it was a different opportunity to get out on the lake that wasn't maybe a water taxi or water vessel like this, it was a different type of vessel, that would be different situation, but yeah.
Are there specific regulations or guidelines or training that the captains need to go under? I mean, maybe the captains can let us know what the training is that they have.
Yeah, Coach Schaefer, Billy Menz, Commissioner Menz.
You can call. I would rather people call me Billy, but
Yeah, that you just can't go and take people out on a boat. You have to have a captain's license. That even goes to like fishing guides and that. That's a requirement of the federal government. So you have to have a captain's license. They have their captain's license. It's a rigorous course. They could probably speak to it. They could probably drive large ships. I mean, it's quite extensive, but that is a requirement for any vessel on navigable waters that take people out for hire have to have that license. And so they have that license, yep.
Okay. Last question, there's going to be an art boat that's going on the river this summer. Would this preclude, how many places can boats go at Boom Island? I mean, I'm there a lot, but I can't remember. So if we have 3 stations for boats and then 1 for the houseboat office, are there any other boats that can be in there or no?
Yeah, Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz. So this is separate from the marina that's there, okay? So this is where, if you recall back 10 years ago, before the Paradise Cruises moved down to Bohemian Flats, there's some pillars there, and there was a dock system there. Those pillars still exist. And so these will be in that location where we had previously had the cruise boats before they moved on to Bohemian Flats. So I'm not familiar with any art boat. I'd be curious on that. But the marina is still open to the public, you know. So we're not taking any public space with this. This is taking an existing area that was once used for a commercial activity and reusing it again. And with that, we can secure it better. So that's part of it too, is the dock goes out, there's a gate, there's lights, there's the electricity, everything is right there. So it's not exposed to the public so that people aren't climbing on their boats. That's why this process has taken a little time too, is to try to figure that out so that, you know, they have a lot of assets sitting there and trying to keep people off of those. So, you know, initially when they were using the marina area, you couldn't control it. People come at night and they could climb on the boats and that type of thing. So working through that, trying to understand where and how this could operate in a safe manner and secure and be secure. So that's why we went there.
Sorry, Commissioners, for so many questions on this. In the agreement, it says about signage. It says that it has to be approved by the park board. Is there a plan for signage? Is there going to be a plan for some sort of notification that, hey, water taxis are here? You know, I would hate to have the public not notice and see the business that's happening and be able to go out. It says via park board approval, and I'm not sure what the process is with signage for companies like this.
Sure, Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Menz. So that's in all of our contract languages. We just don't allow our contractors to put up signs anywhere. And so with all of our contractors, and I've talked to them about this as well, they give us a plan. Where do you want it? You know, for mowing purposes, is it in the right of way? What's the size? Is there light? You know, what is it? And then it's staff approved. You know, we'll talk to our planning department. We'll talk to our asset management department. Okay, what makes sense? So we do allow for signage, but it's within the contained area. You know, so you're not putting signs all the way down the parkway, or, you know, like imagine the concessions and everybody else. You know, they would Burma shave it. So we try to keep our signage so that people can find you, obviously, but we also want it to fit within how our uniform regulations with all of our other signage as well for all of our other concessions. So it would follow that. So that's not unique to this. That's in every one of our contracts, talks about signage.
I kind of figured. Okay. I think that's all I have at this point. Thanks for your work on this. The other houseboat is still there, right?
We can talk
Defer
about
to
that.
them.
That's a separate issue. I want to keep that separate tonight.
Sounds good.
Thank you, Commissioner Menz. Commissioner Musich.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair Schaefer. Was an RFP process followed to solicit concessionaires for this service?
Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioner Musich, we did not do an RFP on it. We didn't do an RFP on it based off the fact that they came with an inquiry, and we've been piloting it for the last 6 years, and nobody's come to us with wanting to do this. Part of it is the requirement of a captain's license, so it's not like a normal rental. So we didn't like send it out to everybody because they came with an idea that we've been permitting for 3 years. Part of this, doing this pilot was to see if there was other interest in this exact activity, and we haven't had anybody come forward. We've had some people come forward to do rentals near the falls, which we were a little bit reluctant to, and then we've directed them to other locations downriver and that type of thing. So we work with everybody. I mean, we don't turn out any opportunities, but to do an exact water taxi based off of somebody's inquiry into it and the time in that, no, we didn't do an RFP on it.
Thank you for that information. I'm not seeing any language in this agreement that prohibits the use of the houseboat for housing. Is there a reason for that, or did I miss it somewhere?
Co-Chair Schaefer, Commissioners, it is in there. Yeah, I do have it in there that it cannot be used for, I'll point it out to you.
Okay, great.
It is, I made sure that was in there, that it can't be, it has to be used for the use of the business. It can't be used for anything else, like to hang out on, to anything like that. It has to be used for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner Musich. President Forney.
Thank you. First of all, Dan and Greg, and also Corey, who I don't think is here anymore. Anyway, so excited that people have been inquiring, about, are you returning? And so you've created a really wonderful opportunity for everybody. Just curious, there was a time that you did pick up people at the sample room, dock, I guess. Are there any expansion of ideas of those types of things?
Co-Chair Schaefer, President Forney. Yeah, there are. I think this is step one in the idea with the water taxi in itself and talking with these guys is having areas where you could be picked up as we develop up. So, for example, Upper Harbor Terminal, if there could be something up there as potentially the sample room, Psycho Susie's, when that was still, I don't know if it's still operating or not, but, that type of thing, to have those opportunities, yes. That part of that will come with master plans as we look at, as development comes on, that type of thing, if there's opportunities. But that is kind of the goal, is to have that true taxi thing, but right now it's more of a cruise, get picked up. We did talk today too, just about picking up like at, the boat landing up north to go like to the Heron Rookery, just to drive around that as a pickup destination versus Boom Island. So the boats would be there, they would pick you up at Camden and maybe take you around that location. So the idea is to get on the river and give tours and showcase what we have.
Great, and since you did mention the Rookery and everything, I hope that at least there's a distance that we keep away from the Rookery. Okay, good, right, honoring of our environment, so I really appreciate it, and I'm just thoroughly excited that you're returning and look forward to being out in the water with you. Thank you.
Commissioner Musich, did you have another question?
No, I didn't.
Great. Any other questions? Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for that explanation. And is your calendar booked for this summer already? It's getting there. Well, maybe the commissioners should all look at our calendars and sign up to take a cruise with you. But thank you. And for all of those that are ready to say aye, let us vote on Resolution 2023-64. Those in favor, please say aye. 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 Any opposed?
No.
Thank you. That resolution carries. I would like to adjourn the Admin and Finance Committee.
I will reconvene then the full board. And go to Resolution 2023-47 that passed out of committee.
Yes, I would like to move Resolution 2023-47, the resolution approving 3 one-year license agreements with Lime, Spin, and Vio, respectively, for authorization to place equipment on MPRB property and permission to operate shared bike and scooter programs throughout the Minneapolis park system.
Wonderful. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, second.
Oh, didn't I get that? Sorry. There is a second now.
I
Okay.
would like to second that.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That action carries. So on then to petitions and communications. I don't know, it's been so long since I've been together with you all, so I'm going to start with Commissioner Olson, if that's okay.
Yeah, definitely excited to see the Earth Day cleanup stuff. I'll be trying my best to get out to Bryant Square Park on a recent walk to the dog park. We brought my bucket and my grip grabber, and I got 7 buckets of trash in like huge gallon things. So it's really satisfying actually though when you can like look back at a road. So 'tis the season to clean up. So thanks y'all.
Commissioner Bennett.
Thank you, President Forney. I have to point out one thing, and because it's Commissioner Menz sitting there in his giant E hat, but we have two commissioners that are not only just Minneapolis public school teachers, high school teachers, but also coaches. That's awesome. That takes a special person to do that work. So thank you very much. Also, I wanted to point out in the petitions and communications section in the back, there's the volunteer impact report. And I really just recommend taking a look at it. It's incredible what the volunteers are doing in our parks. Just as Commissioner Olson said, taking maybe lots of buckets and buckets of litter out of the parks and dealing with invasive species and many other things, recreation and so on, and with working with kids. So just please check that out, and I'm really grateful for the work that this organization does with volunteers. So thank you.
Commissioner Thompson.
Yeah, I will only add, I'm not decked out in South garb, but I feel like it should get their own shout out, although, whatever. That is not park business, but I always love the connection of schools and parks and kids. I mean, that's why I'm here, in reality, so it's always nice to see that shown and my colleagues, and yeah, let's go pick up trash. So that's all I've got.
Commissioner Music.
Thanks, President Forney. Like my colleagues, I am also enthusiastically out picking up garbage every time I'm in the parks. It is one of the sad things that we see as the snow melts, just how much our fellow park users have decided to drop their litter in the park instead of in a trash receptacle. So thank you to everyone that's out there doing that work. It's very important. And I know that we don't have all of our seasonals on staff yet, so helping our full-time staff members with that monumental task is a big deal. I look forward to seeing many of you out at Earth Day cleanups in the system in a couple weeks. I also had the pleasure of driving past thousands of our fellow Minneapolitans out and about enjoying the parks, including people swimming in Lake Nokomis, which just PSA, the water is still very, very cold, and you can very quickly become chilled and suffer from hypothermia. So be safe, and if you're going swimming, make sure you have a buddy that can call for help if you need it. Yeah, very excited about the warm weather, looking forward to more of it. I'm excited also that it's so early in the night that we were able to finish our business, and so I want to say thank you to my colleagues for our expedient meetings. They're great. Thank you.
Commissioner Alper. Pass. Mrs. Schaefer.
Yes, I just want to say thank you to Sherry Brooks, if she ever hears this, but for that report that she put out about the volunteers. I have tried, ever since I have known her through my work in Thomas Lowry Park, to get a picture with her. But she is elusive, and she's always... it's always about everybody else and not her. And so today, I want to say thank you to Sherry Brooks and tell her I'm going to get a photo, even if I have to sneak up on her before my term is done. Thank you.
Stalking, huh? Commissioner Menz.
I don't need that because I'm gonna. So I got the socks on too. So there is a reason for this. This is not like Halloween. I literally came here from the dugout of Target Field. So we had a big game for Roosevelt and Edison today, and we got to play at Target Field because partners really do come through. And I think that one of the things that I did want to mention just really quickly, first of all, I do love picking up trash. I hate it that it's there, and this baseball team will be picking up trash in Northeast Park because we have to steward the spaces that we use. But the facilities that we have, I think that over the past month, since we've met, one thing that's become clear for me from constituents, from the communities that I'm involved in, from the Northeast community, our facilities are the place that things happen, and they are so incredibly valuable. And how we improve those facilities and how we maintain them and how we get people into them and bring community together is an imperative piece of this future puzzle. And I hope that we can, continue to think about that. And because today was the first game in the city of Minneapolis, because it was the facility that was open, not that we're going to open our fields too early. But it is about how we use partners who have money and use partners who are dedicated to our citizens, and how we bring more to our young people and to our families. And I think that those are really important pieces for us to consider. I hear it a lot in the constituents that I talk with, and not only the people who are on the baseball team. So I think that I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you for allowing me to dress up today. I don't expect Commissioner Thompson to come in her getup, but I do hope to see her on a softball field very soon. So, thank you.
Vice President Smith.
All right, thank you. And I love the blue and gold. Go Tommy. So.
Tommy Gray.
So yeah, always. I think similar to what Commissioner Minns was saying about stewarding what we have, I think it's equally important that we take care of the people who show up day in and day out, even when they don't feel supported from people like commissioners that sit up on the dais or the leadership of the park board. Because I have been meeting with a lot of staff who are constituents, that is something that's heavy on my heart. I am a firm believer in people loving where they work. I will never change that as a leader. And so that's really important to me, that I continue to thank the staff day in and day out for the work that they do, because quite honestly, I don't work in a park capacity. I'm not serving in a direct service capacity as a youth development expert anymore. Or I'm not out picking up trash in a park. I may pick it up in my neighborhood. I may coordinate it with, fellow neighbors, but I think it's really important to highlight those folks. So I thank you for your work day in and day out, even when it's hard. And then huge shout out to us for hopefully getting a ton of young people employed or gainfully employed and connected in program and in professional spaces that take care of our young people, that allow for them to make mistakes, that coach them gently while holding them accountable when they don't know how to call into work, when they don't feel well, when the trauma of their community is showing up in their body and they're still expected to show up in our parks. And so hopefully this weekend, the employment fair will be really great. I really hate that we had the conflict tonight with the meeting over at Harrison for our board meeting. So I'm hoping to make the next meeting on Monday to talk about the trees and the impact on community. I'm really hoping that Representative Hansen and Jordan get some traction with the funding, because I know that is a really big deal for folks. And I know the people in North Minneapolis are really rallying for some support, and they're crying out. And so I think the enthusiasm that we have for our environment, for our roadways, for our water, that we have that same enthusiasm for the actual humans that exist and take up space day in and day out, and that we fight with the same passion for what we do as commissioners, as folks that are elected, that we fight with the same passion for those people, even when it is what feels like conflict against like the environment and things of that nature, because the people, if taken care of, will take care of the resources that they have. So that's all I got.
Profound. I seriously. Every time you speak, Vice President Smith, you move me. And I just need you to know that she will be presiding, Ms. Pro Tem, May 10th at our meeting. So I'm very excited about that. So I did want to announce that being that we passed the tree advisory redistribution of their appointees and everything, that I would like to announce that for District 3, it will be John Cruz. For For District 4 will be Mary Bola, excuse me. For District 5, it'll be Carol Searsland. Thank you. And I am doing a change-up. So for District 6, it will be Barb Schlafer. And then for at-large, it will be Tim Keene. So those are the appointees, so we'll be complete on that. And I hope I didn't get it wrong, but I'd like to also wish happy birthday to our Commissioner Schaefer. Thank you all, and on that, I will adjourn meeting here at 8:13. Woo, Jennifer!